Chapter 1259. Although it was his first time meeting Bai Qiuran, Shao Qin recognized her at a glance. Similarly, Bai Qiuran recognized Shao Qin at a glance as well. The two of them looked at each other. Qin Shuru and the other two girls beside Shao Qin all had cold expressions on their faces. Green Bamboo hurriedly went forward to help Si Ju up and fed her a healing pill. Compared to the cold expressions of the other girls, Shao Chen's expression was extremely calm, without any hint of sadness or joy. At that moment, Bai Qiuran was the first to speak. "You're Shao Chen." She spoke in an indifferent and contemptuous tone, as if she didn't care about Shao Chen at all. However, Shao Chen didn't show any signs of anger. Instead, he smiled coldly. "You're that lustful, Bai Qiuran?" Bai Qiuran didn't answer but asked a question instead. His words were sharp. Bai Qiuran's expression suddenly froze when she heard Shao Chen's words. Killing intent rapidly gathered in her eyes. Bai Qiuran had heard that Shao Chen had come to the Tianyin Taiyang sect last night, so she personally came early in the morning. Of course, Bai Qiuran didn't want to kill Shao Chen because it was simply impossible, especially in the Tianyin Taiyang sect. Everyone knew that Yin Yangzi was deliberately taking care of the Sacred Palace people. Under such circumstances, Bai Qiuran obviously couldn't kill Shao Chen. However, although she couldn't kill Shao Chen directly, beating him up wasn't a problem at all. In addition, Shao Chen's words were so sharp that Bai Qiuran was secretly furious. For a moment, Bai Qiuran decided to teach Shao Chen a lesson in front of all the girls present. She wanted them to see with their own eyes that the man they had chosen was nothing more than an ant in front of Bai Qiuran. With that thought, a faint fluctuation of spirit energy emerged from Bai Qiuran's body. The girls' expressions darkened when they sensed the fluctuation of spirit energy, but Shao Chen remained as calm as ever. Shao Chen knew very well what Bai Qiuran was up to when she came here early in the morning. She just wanted to ridicule him in front of all the girls. However, he was overthinking things. Yes, Shao Chen's current strength was indeed inferior to Bai Qiuran's, but one shouldn't forget that Shao Chen and the girls weren't the only ones in the cave abode. She didn't panic at all. Just as Bai Qiuran was about to attack, a lazy voice sounded from outside the courtyard. "Bai Qiuran, are you sure you want to fight?" Long Yang and Feng Ju walked into the front yard with large strides. Seeing the two of them, Bai Qiuran, who had been ready to kill Shao Chen and Feng Ju, instantly changed her expression to one of fear. She stared at Long Yang and Feng Ju, who were slowly walking toward Shao Chen, and exclaimed in surprise. "Long Yang, Feng Ju, why are you in my heavenly Yin Taiyang sect?" As a chosen on the saint ranking, Bai Qiuran naturally recognized Long Yang and Feng Ju. However, the gap between them was too big. Long Yang and Feng Ju were powerful existences on the saint ranking, while Bai Qiuran was ranked last. The gap between them was huge. If Long Yang and Feng Ju were in the first and second echelon of the saint ranking, then Bai Qiuran was in the fourth and fifth echelon. Bai Qiuran was extremely shocked. She didn't expect Long Yang and Feng Ju to appear here in the heavenly Yin Taiyang sect. However, Long Yang smiled faintly in the face of Bai Qiuran's shock. "Bai Qiuran, brother Shao Chen is my best friend. Why? Do you want to fight him?" Both of them were chosen on the saint ranking, but Long Yang's attitude towards Bai Qiuran was very casual and even had a trace of contempt. Bai Qiuran was slightly angry, but there was nothing she could do. She naturally didn't dare to fight Long Yang. This guy was a freak ranked third on the saint ranking. Bai Qiuran couldn't summon the slightest intention to fight Long Yang. Not knowing how to answer, Bai Qiuran simply chose to remain silent. The development of the situation was completely out of her expectations. Seeing Bai Qiuran remain silent, Long Yang didn't mind and continued to smile. "Scram. I don't want to fight." Originally, Long Yang could totally beat Bai Qiuran up, but after thinking about it, he decided against it. After all, Shao Chen had clearly stated that Bai Qiuran's matter had to be resolved by Shao Chen personally. Therefore, Long Yang gave up on the idea of fighting. Upon hearing Long Yang's words, Baichuran's face darkened and she glared fiercely at Xiao Qin. She never thought that Xiao Qin would actually know Long Yang and Feng Ju. Moreover, under normal circumstances, the fights between chosen on the saint ranking wouldn't involve the factions behind them. Firstly, the chosen on the saint ranking had the protection of the will of the heavenly way. Secondly, to become a chosen on the saint ranking, who didn't have a backer. Therefore, Baichuran could only suffer for nothing when facing Long Yang today. The heavenly Yin and Taiyang sect definitely wouldn't stand up for him because Long Yang and Feng Ju were also chosen on the saint ranking. Xiao Qin, I don't believe that Long Yang and Feng Ju can stay in the heavenly Yin and Taiyang sect forever. Humph! Baichuran thought viciously in his heart, then turned and left without another word. After Baichuran left, Feng Ju said indifferently, Xiao Qin, why didn't you just let Long Yang beat him up first? This guy really deserves a beating. Feng Ju could understand why Xiao Qin wanted to kill Baichuran personally. However, in the situation just now, Long Yang could have beaten Baichuran to vent his anger, but Xiao Qin didn't agree. Upon hearing Feng Ju's words, Xiao Qin smiled faintly and said, Why? Don't you have confidence in me? Don't worry, it won't be long before I personally deal with him. Xiao Qin didn't care too much about Baichuran's arrival. Right now, Xiao Qin was most concerned about how he could quickly integrate into the heavenly Yin and Taiyang sect and make Yin Yangzi value him. Only then would he have a chance of killing Baichuran. Otherwise, with Yin Yangzi's protection, he definitely wouldn't be able to do anything to Baichuran. At the same time that Baichuran left in a huff, in Yin Yangzi's cave residence, the old servant respectfully reported to Yin Yangzi about Xiao Qin. After hearing the old servant's report, Yin Yangzi nodded slightly and said, You can get ready. Prepare for Xiao Qin's talent test today, but don't make it a big deal. Just keep it a secret. When the time comes, I will personally go and take a look. Today was the day to prepare for Xiao Qin's talent test. Hearing this, the old servant respectfully nodded and replied, Yes. With that, the old servant left. At this moment, Yin Yangzi muttered thoughtfully, Sigh, a mountain can't have two tigers. However, Xiao Qin, do you really have the ability to make this old man willingly give up on Baichuran? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 1260. Yin Yangzi actually had a headache about the matter between Xiao Qin and Baichuran. If the two of them could get along peacefully, it would definitely be the best outcome for the Taiyang sect. Unfortunately, that was no longer possible. Wanting Xiao Qin and Baichuran to get along peacefully was simply a fool's dream. Yin Yangzi was not a 3-year-old child, so he naturally understood this principle. He had never thought of making the two of them bury the hatchet because it was impossible. Since they couldn't get along peacefully, they could only choose between the two. As for the standard of choice, it would depend on Xiao Qin's talent. To put it bluntly, if Yin Yangzi wanted to choose Xiao Qin, then Xiao Qin's talent had to be higher than Baichuran's. That was the only possibility. After all, in terms of current strength, Xiao Qin was definitely inferior to Baichuran. Then, they could only rely on talent and future. Yin Yangzi had to feel that Xiao Qin's future achievements would definitely surpass Baichuran's. Only then would Yin Yangzi favor Xiao Qin. Of course, it wasn't easy to surpass Baichuran's talent. As a chosen on the saint rankings, Baichuran's talent had already reached 98 meters. In that case, Xiao Qin would have to reach at least 99 meters. In other words, he would have to be on the same level as Long Yang and the other top 3 chosen on the saint rankings. Only then would Yin Yangzi favor him. If Xiao Qin's talent was inferior to Baichuran's after the test, or even if Xiao Qin's talent was the same as Baichuran's, Yin Yangzi would probably choose Baichuran without hesitation. After all, if the two of them had the same talent and Bai Churan was stronger than Xiao Qin, then it was needless to say who would choose. Therefore, in this talent test, Xiao Qin's talent had to surpass Bai Churan's. Only then would Yin Yangzi favor him. Xiao Qin had already expected this. At this moment, Yin Yangzi's old servant had personally come to inform him of the talent test in Gu Lingyao's dwelling. Xiao Qin had already heard about the talent test from the three women, so Xiao Qin wasn't surprised by the old servant's arrival. According to Yin Yangzi, the talent test for Xiao Qin would be conducted in Gu Lingyao's dwelling without alerting too many people. At the same time, even Long Yang and Feng Ju were asked to leave. They were not allowed to watch from the side. Yin Yangzi didn't seem to want to expose Xiao Qin's talent, so Long Yang and Feng Ju left as instructed. Although the two of them were chosen on the saint rankings and the experts of the Taiyang sect didn't dare to attack them, they still had to abide by the rules. After dismissing the irrelevant people, Xiao Qin, Tianyu, Qin Shuru, and Yin Yangzi's old servant soon arrived at a mountain peak at the edge of Gu Lingyao's dwelling. They prepared to take the talent test. At the beginning, Tianyu was the one to take the test. Tianyu hadn't tested her talent before, so the old servant was extremely surprised by the result. Tianyu was 98 meters tall, the same as Bai Churan, Chunling, Long Qing, and Chen Yu. After the test, the old servant took a deep look at Tianyu. He didn't expect another 98 meters tall person to appear. But surprise aside, the most important thing today was still Xiao Qin's talent test. According to Xiao Xing and the others, Xiao Qin was the most talented person in the sacred palace, then Xiao Qin's talent might very well exceed 99 meters. A 99-meter tall talent, what kind of concept was that? It had been a long time since a 99-meter tall person had appeared in the human race. His heart was filled with anticipation. Because of this, when Xiao Qin walked toward the talent testing stone, the old servant beside Yin Yangzi also became extremely serious. At the same time, no one noticed that Yin Yangzi was also hiding in the void above everyone's head, silently watching everything. Xiao Qin began the test. On the other side, in a garden not far from here, Long Yang and Feng Ju weren't allowed to watch Xiao Qin's talent test. At this moment, Long Yang was idly drinking wine while Feng Ju sat beside him with an unhappy expression. Clearly, Feng Ju was angry because he was refused to watch Xiao Qin's talent test. Seeing this, Long Yang took a sip of wine and said, "All right, what's there to be angry about? It's just a small matter." Long Yang chuckled when he saw Feng Ju's unhappy expression. Hearing this, Feng Ju turned to look at Long Yang and asked, "What level do you think Xiao Qin's talent will reach?" "At least the same level as Bai Churan. It's even possible that he might reach my level." Hearing Feng Ju's words, Long Yang took a sip of wine and said with a smile. Long Yang's words were very casual, but Feng Ju was shocked when he heard it. What did it mean to reach Long Yang's level? One had to know that there were only two people in the central world who could compare with Long Yang's talent. But now, Long Yang was saying that Xiao Qin's talent might not be weaker than his. Shock flashed in Feng Ju's eyes. Seeing this, Long Yang smiled faintly and said, "What, you don't believe me?" His evaluation of Xiao Qin was very high, but Feng Ju really didn't dare to believe it. After all, a 99-meter tall talent was absolutely terrifying. While the two were chatting with each other, Xiao Qin was already sitting on the talent testing stone on the mountain peak in the distance. At the same time, a spiritual energy vortex began to form above Xiao Qin's head. It could be said that there was almost no obstruction. Xiao Qin's spiritual energy vortex rushed to the 98-meter level in one fell swoop, and at this time, the spiritual energy vortex was still growing and had no intention of stopping. Looking at the spiritual energy vortex that was growing and approaching the 99-meter level, everyone was extremely nervous. Everyone was looking forward to whether Xiao Qin's talent could reach the 99-meter level. Under everyone's gaze, Xiao Chen's talent successfully broke through the 99-meter mark, and it only stopped when it was almost 100 meters. A 99-meter talent. Facing such a result, Qin Shuru and the other two girls looked at each other and smiled. The old servant next to Yinyangzi was stunned on the spot as if he had entered a meditative state. As a half-step great saint, this old servant's vision was definitely very high, but even so, he was still shocked by the scene in front of him. 99 meters, this was 99 meters. Among the human clan, only Xiao Chen's talent had reached the 99-meter level. The other human clan saints were all at the 98-meter level. It could be said that Xiao Chen, who had a 99-meter talent, already had the potential to stand at the top of the central world. Not only the old servant, but Yinyangzi, who was hidden in the void, also had a dull expression on her face at this time. Excitement, and joy constantly flashed in her eyes. Request collection, request monthly votes, request recommendation. Chapter 1261. His talent had really reached 99 meters. Everyone present was shocked by this result. It wasn't until the spirit chi vortex above Xiao Chen's head slowly disappeared and Xiao Chen walked out of the talent testing stone that the old servant beside Yinyangzi recovered from his shock. It was no wonder that the old servant was so shocked. What did a genius with a talent of 99 meters represent? One had to know that among the 100 races in the central world, there were only 3 races with a talent of 99 meters. Now, the human race also had such a peerless prodigy. The old servant took a deep look at Xiao Chen, not knowing what to say. It was at this moment that Yinyangzi suddenly appeared. Yinyangzi was originally hidden in the void, but after witnessing Xiao Chen's talent with his own eyes, Yinyangzi finally decided to show himself and meet Xiao Chen. With such talent, Xiao Chen was enough for Yinyangzi to pay attention to. His hair, which was half black and half white, was extremely eye-catching. As Yinyangzi appeared, the old servant was the first to bow. Then, Xiao Chen, Qin Shuru, and the other 2 girls followed suit. Yinyangzi didn't react to everyone's greetings. He looked at Xiao Chen and said indifferently, "Everyone, you may leave now. You guys can leave now. I want to talk to Xiao Chen alone." He signaled the old servant, Qin Shuru, and the other 3 women to withdraw first. Hearing this, no one said anything. After all, as a great holy emperor, no one in the heavenly Yin-Yang sect could disobey Yinyangzi's words. Everyone left, and soon, only Yinyangzi and Xiao Chen were left on the mountain peak. This wasn't the first time he had seen Yinyangzi, but the first time was when the sacred palace was attacked by the Ghost King sect. At that time, Xiao Chen only glanced at Yinyangzi from afar, and the two didn't communicate much. Later, because of the spatial turbulence, Xiao Chen naturally didn't have the chance to come in contact with Yinyangzi. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't nervous when facing the great sage so close for the first time. However, without giving Xiao Chen much time to think, Yinyangzi had already arrived beside Xiao Xing and said indifferently, "Is there really no other choice about the matter with Baichuran?" He didn't expect Yinyangzi to bring up this matter as soon as he spoke. Clearly, the talent that Xiao Chen had displayed had changed Yinyangzi's mind. A talent of 99 meters was enough for Yinyangzi to value Xiao Chen. Moreover, if Yinyangzi really had to choose between Xiao Chen and Baichuran, then Yinyangzi would probably choose Xiao Chen. The reason was very simple. Although Xiao Chen's current cultivation and strength were inferior to Baichuran's, in terms of talent and potential, Baichuran couldn't catch up to Xiao Chen. The difference of 1 meter between 98 and 99 meters was not to be underestimated. At this level, a difference of 1 meter was the difference between heaven and earth. Even though Baichuran was now a chosen on the saint rankings, with his talent entering the top 50 of the saint rankings was already his limit. However, Xiao Chen was different. With a talent of 99 meters, Xiao Chen had hope of reaching the top 3 of the saint rankings. In other words, Shao Chun had the qualifications to reach the top 3 of the saint rankings. Because of this, because Shao Chun had greater potential, Yin Yangzi was now more inclined towards Shao Chun. As long as Shao Chun wasn't a chosen, his future achievements would definitely surpass Baichuran's and help the heavenly Yin Sun sect and the entire human race more than Baichuran. However, even though he was already biased, Yin Yangzi still couldn't help but ask at the last moment. It would naturally be best if Shao Chun and Baichuran could bury the hatchet. Unfortunately, in response to his question, Shao Chun only replied calmly, "If I don't kill Baichuran in this life, I, Shao Chun, swear that I'm not human." Shao Chun didn't directly answer Yin Yangzi's question, but his words made his intentions clear. Between him and Baichuran, only one could live. Shao Chun naturally couldn't let Baichuran live after doing such a thing to Baihua Fairy, because this had crossed Shao Chun's bottom line. Yin Yangzi wasn't surprised at all when he heard Shao Chun's words. He had already expected all of this. He had only asked this because he wanted to try again. Perhaps there would be a miracle. It was impossible for Shao Chun and Baichuran to coexist. Yin Yangzi understood and didn't continue on this topic. Yin Yangzi continued, "In that case, what do you want me to do?" Yin Yangzi's words were very straightforward. He also wanted to rope in Shao Chun. A person with a 99-meter talent was enough for Yin Yangzi to rope in. Moreover, Yin Yangzi didn't want Shao Chun to hold any grudges against the Taiyang sect because of Baichuran. Shao Chun naturally understood what Yin Yangzi meant. In fact, Shao Chun didn't have any complaints about Yin Yangzi. This wasn't because of his identity as the great sage, but because of the care Yin Yangzi had shown the Sacred Palace people during this period. Think about it, without Yin Yangzi's care, the situation would have only become more serious. It was also because of Yin Yangzi that Baichuran had many concerns when she acted, which allowed the Sacred Palace people to be safe. Shao Chun was very grateful to Yin Yangzi. Therefore, after hearing Yin Yangzi's words, Shao Chun didn't think too much and cupped his hands. "Patriarch, there's no need to do anything. This is a matter between me and Baichuran. It should be resolved by us." There was no need for Yin Yangzi to do anything. If he needed external help to deal with Baichuran, Shao Chun would have agreed when Long Yang suggested he do it. Yin Yangzi nodded in satisfaction when he heard Shao Chun's answer. Shao Chun's performance had left a good impression on Yin Yangzi. If Shao Chun had asked him to punish Baichuran, Yin Yangzi wouldn't have said anything, but his impression of Shao Chun would definitely have dropped. However, Shao Chun didn't do so, which surprised Yin Yangzi a little. He nodded slightly. Yin Yangzi said, "You're still not on the Saint Sage list. You're still not a chosen on the hallowed rankings, so you can only be a prospective chosen of my heavenly Yin Yang sect for now. However, with your talent, it won't be long before you make it onto the hallowed rankings. You should focus on your cultivation during this period of time. If there's anything else, wait until you make it onto the hallowed rankings." Since Shao Chun didn't need him to do anything, Yin Yangzi naturally wouldn't force him. At the same time, he told Shao Chun that with his current situation, successfully making it onto the Saint Sage list was his top priority. Everything else could be set aside for now. Shao Chun clasped his hands respectfully when he heard Yin Yangzi's words. "I will remember your teachings, Patriarch." "All right, get ready. The heavenly Yin Valley is about to open. This time, you will enter together. This is a cultivation treasure ground for our heavenly Yin Yang sect. I believe it will be of great help to you," Yin Yangzi said. "Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me." Chapter 1262. The opening of the heavenly Yin Valley was definitely a major event for the heavenly Yin Taiyang sect. Countless disciples would fight for a spot to enter the heavenly Yin Valley. However, Yin Yangzi had given such a precious spot to Shao Chun so easily. Logically speaking, Shao Chun did not have the qualifications to enter the heavenly Yin Valley. However, since Yin Yangzi had spoken, there was naturally no problem. From this, it could be seen how much importance Yin Yangzi attached to Xiaoqin. This was normal. After all, Xiaoqin's talent was there for all to see. With such a peerless genius, Yin Yangzi would be stupid if he did not put in effort to nurture him. Xiaoqin still did not know how precious the spot to enter the heavenly Yin Valley was, so he did not feel anything when he heard Yin Yangzi's words. Seeing that Xiaoqin nodded in agreement, Yin Yangzi continued. Also, since you insist on resolving the matter with Baichuran yourself, there's nothing much I can say. However, there's something I have to remind you of. Talent is talent, but you have to be careful before talent turns into strength. You mustn't do anything brainless. After all, no matter how talented a dead person is, it's not worth mentioning. Yin Yangzi took the initiative to remind him. As soon as this sentence came out, it further proved Yin Yangzi's choice. Of course, Xiaoqin could only say that Yin Yangzi was overthinking. Xiaoqin had never been a flower that grew up in a greenhouse. Xiaoqin understood this logic even without Yin Yangzi's reminder. Talent was talent, strength was strength. These were two different things. Xiaoqin knew very well that he was no match for Baichuran now, so he had never thought of taking revenge on Baichuran now. Of course, Xiaoqin also firmly believed that it would not be long before he could catch up to Baichuran. Baichuran would be the best stepping stone for him to climb onto the saint leaderboard and become a saint. Xiaoqin wanted to use Baichuran's life to establish his position on the saint leaderboard. However, before that, he could collect some interest. Since Yin Yangzi was also here, Xiaoqin took the opportunity to speak. Patriarch, I have a presumptuous request. You want to enter the Sunless Mountain? As soon as Xiaoqin finished speaking, Yin Yangzi already knew what he wanted to say. Xiaoqin wanted to enter Mount Sunless and kill the 4 prospective sons. After all, the 4 prospective sons were also involved in the incident that night. Moreover, Siju and Green Bamboo were taken away by the 4 of them. Therefore, the 4 of them deserved to die. Xiaoqin's patriarchs. After all, the 4 prospective saints of the Taiyang sect. After all, the 4 prospective saint. Hearing that Yin Yangzi directly exposed his thoughts, Xiaoqin did not hide it and nodded solemnly. Patriarch, these 4 people have evil intentions and deserve to be killed. But they are all prospective saints of the Taiyang sect. The loss will be the strength of the Taiyang sect, Yin Yangzi said indifferently. These words sounded like a refusal, but after a slight pause, Yin Yangzi continued. Forget it. You can enter the Sunless Mountain with this token. Yin Yangzi unexpectedly agreed, and casually threw a black token to Xiaoqin. Before Xiaoqin could reply, Yin Yangzi's figure disappeared. At the same time, a faint sigh was transmitted to Xiaoqin's ears. Xiaoqin, I hope you won't disappoint me. Yin Yangzi's action clearly meant that he had given up on the 4 prospective saints and allowed Xiaoqin to enter the Sunless Mountain. There was no need to think about the result. The 4 prospective saints would undoubtedly die. However, this was normal when he thought about it. For Xiaoqin, he could even give up Baichuran and Yin Yangzi, let alone the 4 prospective saint. Yin Yangzi's actions were not because he was too black-bellied and had no feelings for his disciples. It couldn't be helped. In any place, strength was everything. People without value could only be reduced to cannon fodder or sacrificed. Xiaoqin had already shown his value, so Yin Yangzi chose Xiaoqin. It was a very simple reason. Here, if he could use the lives of the 4 prospective saints in exchange for a sense of belonging to the Taiyang sect, it would definitely be a profitable deal. Among the Sacred Palace disciples, in addition to Xiaoqin, a peerless heaven pride with a talent of 99 meters, there were also Chun Ling, Long Qing, Chen Yu, Tian Yu and other heaven prides with talents of 95 meters and above. It could be said that the potential of the Sacred Palace disciples was far greater than that of the 4 prospective saints. Sacrificing them in exchange for the sacred palace disciples was the best choice for Yangzi. As the patriarch of a sect, every decision Yangzi made could only be made with the sect as the prerequisite. As long as it was beneficial to the sect, Yangzi had no reason to refuse. This was also why Yangzi agreed. It had to be said that Yangzi's choice was indeed correct, and the answer would be revealed in the future. After this short conversation with Yangzi, Shao Qin was even more grateful to Yangzi. Although he knew that Yangzi was only doing this because of his talent, it had to be said that Yangzi's actions had made Shao Qin acknowledge the Taiyang sect. After putting away the token, Shao Qin quickly returned to Hundred Flower Fairy's residence. When Shao Qin appeared, Hundred Flower Fairy, Qin Shuru, Gu Lingyao, Tian Yu, Long Yang, Feng Ju and the others were sitting in a circle in the courtyard. Upon seeing Shao Qin's return, Long Yang smiled and said to Feng Ju, "Oh, Feng Ju, didn't you want to know brother Shao Qin's talent? Ask him yourself." Feng Ju really wanted to know Shao Qin's talent, but after being teased by Long Yang, Feng Ju rolled his eyes at Long Yang. In the end, he couldn't help but ask about Shao Qin's talent. Shao Qin naturally had no intention of hiding anything from Long Yang and Feng Ju, so he smiled and said, 99 meters. Shao Qin said it casually, but after hearing this, Feng Ju's expression changed and he was instantly stunned. It's really 99 meters. Shao Qin didn't know much about the talent of 99 meters. Although he knew that such a talent should be very high, he didn't know that it would be this high. In the entire Central World, the number of people who could reach 99 meters was less than 5. And now, Shao Qin was added to the list. It's really 99 meters. Feng Ju thought in shock. Compared to Feng Ju's shock, Long Yang was much calmer. He continued to drink his wine unhurriedly with a faint smile hanging on the corner of his mouth. At the same time, he thought to himself, "This is interesting. I wonder what those two guys will do if they know about this. I'm afraid they will personally come to the human territory." The two people that Long Yang thought of were none other than the two people who were in the top 3 of the holy rankings. Please add, please vote, please recommend. Chapter 1263. In fact, there wasn't much difference in strength between the 3 of them. Although Long Yang was ranked 3rd, the 2 people ahead of him didn't dare to say that they could defeat Long Yang. In fact, the 3 of them were almost on par with each other. They might be able to defeat Long Yang by 1 or 2 moves, but there wouldn't be a big gap between them. Moreover, it was hard to say who would win if they were to fight to the death. Therefore, the top 3 of the holy rankings were actually on the same level. There was no such thing as the first place being stronger than the second or third place. Long Yang couldn't help but look forward to what would happen if the other 2 found out that Shao Qin's talent had also reached 99 meters. Given their personalities, they would probably do anything. Perhaps that was why Yangzi wanted to keep it a secret. After all, Shao Qin hadn't really matured yet. It wouldn't be a good thing to expose his talent too early. Although the Yin and Yang sects could protect Shao Qin, it would be troublesome if the holy rankings were involved. After all, the holy rankings were special existences in the Central World. They were practically above the 100 races. Take Long Yang and Feng Ju as an example. The 2 of them could move freely in the human territory, but the human experts didn't dare to attack them. Shao Qin and Long Yang had a lot to drink. Shao Qin also told everyone that he was going to Sunless Mountain. Everyone naturally knew why Shao Qin was going to Sunless Mountain. However, Qin Shuru and the other 3 women were worried. "Husband, those 4 guys are shameless, but they aren't weak. You're going alone." "Don't worry, I won't go alone. Siju, go inform Big Brother, second sister, and senior brother Qin Yu that they'll go with me to Sunless Mountain tomorrow." Shao Qin smiled in response to the 4 women's worry. Of course, he couldn't go alone. Although Shao Qin was confident in his own strength, he wasn't stupid. With his current strength, he might be stronger than the 4 prospective holy sons. However, it was still impossible for him to fight the 4 of them alone. After all, any one of the prospective holy sons of the yin and yang sects possessed the strength of a holy sun in the North Star boundary. Therefore, from the very beginning, Shao Chun had already planned to bring Chen Ling, Long Qing, and Chen Yu on this trip. Hearing Shao Chen's words, Qin Shuru and the other 2 girls were relieved. With Chen Ling and the other 2, there shouldn't be any problems. However, at this time, Long Yang spoke. Sunless Mountain, the place where the heavenly yin-yang sect imprisons disciples who have broken the sect's rules. Brother Shaoqin, Feng Ju and I will go with you tomorrow. It just so happens that I am very curious about this Sunless Mountain. Long Yang's character had always been lively. Now that he heard that Shaoqin was going to Sunless Mountain, how could he miss it? Hearing Long Yang's words and seeing his playful face, Shao Chen finally nodded his head in agreement. It wasn't a big deal to bring Long Yang and Feng Ju. After all, Sunless Mountain was just a dungeon of the heavenly yin-yang sect. Moreover, the people who were imprisoned were all disciples who had broken the sect's rules. There were no secrets to speak of. Therefore, even if he brought Long Yang and Feng Ju, Yin Yangzi wouldn't say anything. Of course, if he brought them to the heavenly Yin Valley, it would be a different story. Yin Yangzi would never agree. According to Shao Chen's instructions, Si Ju also informed Chen Ling and the others as soon as possible. After learning about this matter, Chen Ling and the others didn't refuse. Moreover, with their temperament they naturally figured out the whole matter very quickly. Since Shao Chen could enter Sunless Mountain, Yin Yangzi must have agreed. Since Yin Yangzi had agreed, it meant that between Shao Chen and Bai Qiran, Yin Yangzi had chosen Shao Chen. This was naturally good news for the people of the Sacred Palace. After a silent night, early the next morning, Chen Ling, Long Qing, Chen Yu, and even the Qing Emperor and the others gathered in Gu Lingyao's cave dwelling. At the same time, the higher-ups of the heavenly yin-yang sect officially announced that Shao Chen had become the prospective chosen of the heavenly yin-yang sect. Another prospective chosen had suddenly appeared. It seemed that ever since the people of the Sacred Palace joined the heavenly yin-yang sect, there had been an endless stream of new prospective chosen. However, Shao Chen didn't care at all about becoming the prospective chosen of the heavenly yin-yang sect. In Shao Chen's opinion, becoming a prospective chosen was a completely insignificant matter. The only thing Shao Chen had his eyes on now was the chosen of the saint ranking. As for the prospective chosen, to put it bluntly, although they had a high status in the heavenly yin-yang sect, no one cared about them outside. Only the chosen of the saint ranking was recognized by the entire central world. Of course, this could only be attributed to Shao Chen's high standard. But thinking about it, he was already the first chosen in the North Star boundary. Why would Shao Chen care about the identity of a prospective chosen in the central world? Paying no attention to what was happening outside, Shao Chen and the others sat in the main hall of the 100-Flower Fairies' cave dwelling. The Qing Emperor and the others had expressed their willingness to go with Shao Chen and the others to enter the Sunless Mountain today, but Shao Chen had refused. This time, they were only going to enter the Sunless Mountain to kill the 4 prospective chosen. In addition, the Sunless Mountain itself wasn't a good place, so it was useless to send so many people. This time, only Big Brother, Second Sister, and Senior Brother Qin you need to go, Shao Chen said as he looked at the crowd. Without wasting any time, after a few simple words, Shao Chen, Chen Ling, and the others set off for the Sunless Mountain. Of course, Long Yang and Feng Ju were also with them. However, the 2 of them were obviously just here to watch the show and had no intention of making a move. Of course, Shao Chen didn't want them to make a move either. The group headed straight for the Sunless Mountain. As the place of punishment of the heavenly yin-yang sect, the Sunless Mountain was naturally located in the depths of the heavenly yin-yang sect. Moreover, there were many protective talisman arrays around the Sunless Mountain. At the same time, the entrance was guarded by experts of the heavenly Yin-Yang sect. Along the way to the entrance of the heavenly Yin-Yang sect, Shao Qin and the others were stopped by a saint. Looking at them, the saint said coldly, "The Sunless Mountain is an important place. Leave immediately." The Sunless Mountain naturally didn't allow anyone to get close. After hearing the saint's words, Shao Qin didn't say much. He directly flashed the token that Yin Yangzi had given him and said, "We want to enter the Sunless Mountain." Seeing the token, the saint was stunned at first, then carefully confirmed its authenticity. After confirming that the token was indeed real, the saint didn't dare to ask any more questions and immediately let Shao Qin and the others enter the Sunless Mountain. After successfully entering the Sunless Mountain and passing through the entrance, the group realized that the Sunless Mountain was indeed the place of punishment of the heavenly Yin-Yang sect. It could be described as completely dark. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 1264. In Sunless Mountain, there was no sun, night, or day. The sky was gray all year round, and it was drizzling all the time. At the same time, this rain was not ordinary rain, it was full of corrosiveness. Although the corrosive nature of the rain wouldn't cause too much damage to cultivators and could be completely offset by the spiritual energy in their bodies, this was only temporary. Over the years, the rainwater would slowly seep into the body, causing severe pain in the bones. At the same time, under the corrosive rainwater, the ground in Sunless Mountain was also devoid of life. The ground was incomparably muddy, and the air was filled with a rotten smell. The stench drifted in the air with the wind and formed an extreme yin-qi. This yin-qi could constantly devour the spirit energy of warriors. Although the speed was not fast, it could even be said to be very slow, but over time, the spirit energy in the warrior's body would be devoured. As a result, it was naturally more difficult and firm to live in Sunless Mountain. The punishment of Sunless Mountain was like a soft knife. It couldn't kill you or even hurt you, but day after day, year after year, you'd find that your body was getting weaker day by day. At the same time, you'd have to bear a huge psychological pressure. As soon as Shao Qin entered Sunless Mountain, he had already felt that his spirit energy began to be devoured very slowly. It must be the doing of the yin-qi in Sunless Mountain. However, at this speed, it was impossible to completely devour his spirit energy without 10 days to half a month. And by then, Shao Qin would have already left. This is Sunless Mountain. It is really as dark as the rumors say. Like Shao Qin, everyone was also looking at the environment of Sunless Mountain. Long Yang said with a chuckle at this time. Hearing Long Yang's words, Shao Qin curled his lip. This guy really didn't know what to do. Shao Qin didn't want to waste any more time talking to him. He turned to the others and said, "Let's go. Find those 4 guys, kill them, and leave." Hearing Shao Qin's words, everyone nodded in agreement. Indeed, the Sunless Mountain was a place that made people very uncomfortable. Find the 4 prospective holy sons and kill them. According to Shao Qin's instructions, everyone began to search for traces of the 4 prospective holy sons in Sunless Mountain. The Sunless Mountain was not large, and those who were imprisoned there were all disciples of the Yin and Yang sects who had broken the sect's rules. Their cultivation had not been sealed, nor had their movements been restricted. At the very least, they could move freely within the Sunless Mountain. Because of this, Shao Qin and the others were stopped by a dozen ragged disciples of the heavenly Yin and extreme Yang sect before long. Looking at Shao Qin and the others, a hint of mockery flashed in the eyes of these disciples. The leader even sneered and said, "Oh, there's a newcomer. Come over and take off your clothes." Not knowing the identity of Shao Qin and the others, these people only thought that Shao Qin was also imprisoned in Sunless Mountain because he had broken the sect's rules. Seeing the brand new clothes on Shao Qin and the others, the disciples' eyes lit up. In a place like Sunless Mountain, people's needs were greatly reduced. A clean set of clothes was enough to make these disciples go crazy. Therefore, when they saw Shao Chen and the others, they were all ready to snatch them. However, these people were clearly looking for the wrong target. Hearing these words, Shao Chen glanced at Chen Ling beside him. Chen Ling also understood and stepped forward, looking at the leader in front of him as he said, "Where are Wang Ju and the others?" Wang Ju was one of the 4 prospective holy sons. Hearing Chen Ling's words, the leader was stunned at first, but then he angrily cursed. "You're courting death. Senior brother Wang Ju's name is not something you can casually call. Cut the crap and take off your clothes or else." The leader obviously knew Wang Ju, and from the looks of it, he was quite aggressive towards Wang Ju. In fact, this was normal. After all, Wang Ju was the prospective holy son of the heavenly Yin-Yang sect. When ordinary disciples faced him, it was certain that they would be respectful. Since they knew Wang Ju, it was easy to deal with them. Therefore, before the leader could finish speaking, Chen Ling directly chose to attack. They were just ordinary disciples of the heavenly Yin-Yang sect. These people were naturally not Chen Ling's match. Not long after, these more than 10 people were beaten to the ground one by Chen Ling. The leader was especially taken care of by Chen Ling, who beat him until he constantly begged, "Senior brother, spare me, spare me. This junior brother has eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai." One person crushed a group of them. So, no matter how stupid the leader was, he knew that they had bitten off more than they could chew. However, in the face of this person's begging, Chen Ling completely ignored him. He stopped what he was doing and asked coldly, "Since you know Wang Ju, do you know where he is?" I know. Hearing this, the disciple nodded repeatedly. "And the other 3 people with Wang Ju? They're all together. They're all with senior brother Wang Ju." Wang Ju and the other 3 were imprisoned in the Sunless Mountain together, so they were naturally together. Hearing this, a smile finally appeared on Chen Ling's face, and then he said indifferently, "Take us there." With someone leading the way, things were naturally much easier. Not long after, under the guidance of the disciple, Shao Chen and the others arrived at the entrance of a cave. In the Sunless Mountain, there were not many caves like this. Firstly, the ground of the Sunless Mountain was very wet, and there were not many places to dig caves. Secondly, the Sunless Mountain was very hard, and it was extremely difficult to dig a cave. Therefore, a cave like this was often dug by many generations of disciples. Under normal circumstances, those who could live in such a cave were people of high status. After all, if they lived in a cave, they could at least avoid the endless rain. After bringing Shao Chen and the others out of the cave, the disciple respectfully said to Chen Ling, Senior brother Wang Ju and the others are inside." Hearing this, Chen Ling nodded slightly, and then he let go of the disciple. Seeing this, the disciple did not dare to stay any longer, and immediately ran away. However, after running for a distance, the disciple found a place to hide out of curiosity, and secretly watched the development of the situation. He knew that the disciple did not leave, but so what? At this time, without Shao Chen saying anything, Long Qing, who had the most impatient temper, already stood outside the cave and shouted, "Wang Ju, come out and die." The voice clearly transmitted into the cave, and soon, there was a reply from the cave, only to hear the same cold shout. "Which blind fool is courting death? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 1265. It didn't take much effort to find Wang Ju's group of 4. At this moment, a cold shout came from within the cave. Immediately, 4 young men wearing the prospective Holy Sun robes of the Heavenly Yin Sun sect strode out of the cave. The clothes on the 4 of them were decent, unlike the ragged clothes of the dozen or so disciples he saw earlier. It could be imagined that the 4 of them should be living a good life in Sunless Mountain. Facing the 4 people in front of him, Shao Chen already knew that they were Wang Ju's group. As expected, when Wang Ju's group saw Chun Ling, Long Qing, and Qin Yu, a cold smile appeared on their faces. As the saying goes, when enemies meet, their eyes turn red. When he saw Chun Ling's group, the leader, Wang Ju, immediately revealed a cold smile. Chun Ling, the three of you also entered Sunless Mountain? Haha. He thought that Chun Ling's group had also been punished and imprisoned in Sunless Mountain. However, facing Wang Ju's cold smile, Chun Ling did not reply. Instead, Xiao Chen said expressionlessly, "You're Wang Ju." Wang Ju had never seen Xiao Chen before. When he heard Xiao Chen's words, he frowned slightly and asked, "Who are you?" He did not know Xiao Chen's identity. When he heard Wang Ju's words, Xiao Chen did not beat around the bush and said indifferently, "Xiao Chen." After speaking, without waiting for Wang Ju's reply, Xiao Chen immediately chose to attack. He pointed his finger and instantly used the fish intestine sword finger. In the face of Xiao Chen's sudden attack, Wang Ju did not care about what he was thinking. He immediately attacked with a palm strike and also used a saint-level martial skill. The martial civilization of the Central World was clearly higher than the North Star realm. Therefore, although there were very few saint-level martial skills in the North Star realm, there were not many in the Central World. Moreover, as the prospective holy son of the heavenly Yin Sun sect, it was not strange that Wang Ju had a saint-level martial skill. The two saint-level martial skills fiercely collided in the air. At this time, Wang Ju shouted angrily, "You're Xiao Chen?" Wang Ju was definitely not unfamiliar with the name Xiao Chen because Bai Churan had mentioned Xiao Chen in front of him more than once. Although he had never met Xiao Chen, Wang Ju knew that the person who Bai Churan hated the most was Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen's name. Although he didn't know why Xiao Chen had appeared in the Sunless Mountain, Xiao had's T.S. and was, and now Xiao Chen. T. Chen. This was definitely the best opportunity to show off in front of Bai Churan. Therefore, as soon as he finished speaking, Wang Ju's eyes flashed with intense killing intent. Keenly sensing Wang Ju's killing intent, Xiao Chen sneered inwardly. Wang Ju was about to die, but he still didn't know. He actually wanted to kill Wang Ju and then claim credit from Bai Churan. It was a good idea, but unfortunately, Wang Ju didn't have the chance. The two of them attacked. On the side, Chun Ling, Long Qing, and Qin Yu also attacked. As for Long Yang and Feng Ju, they stood to the side and didn't have the slightest intention of joining in. This time, they entered the Sunless Mountain to kill Wang Ju's group with Yinyangzi's approval. Therefore, Xiao Chen's group didn't have the slightest hesitation when they attacked. In a head-on collision, the fish intestine sword finger and Wang Ju's palm print cancelled each other out and slowly dissipated. However, at the same time, Xiao Chen had already summoned the dustless sword and moved his feet to attack Wang Ju. Over the years, as Xiao Chen's strength improved, the dustless sword, which was formed from the heavenly sword embryo, naturally couldn't not improve at all. Compared to when it was just formed, the dustless sword was many times stronger. As the sword slashed down, a terrifying sword intent wreaked havoc. The ground was cut open, and the sword rushed towards Wang Ju like lightning. Facing Xiao Chen's attack again, Wang Ju was a little surprised. He didn't expect Xiao Chen to be so strong. However, before he could think too much, Xiao Chen's sword had already arrived. Wang Ju immediately blocked it. The two of them fought fiercely. After a short few tens of moves, Xiao Chen already had a rough understanding of Wang Ju's strength. As expected of the heavenly Yin-Yang sect's quasi-saint, Wang Ju's strength was extremely formidable. In the northern star dimension, Wang Ju's strength was indeed sufficient to become a saint. Unfortunately, Wang Ju's strength was still slightly weaker when compared to Xiao Chen. Especially in terms of physical strength, he wasn't a match for Xiao Chen at all. After gaining a rough understanding of Wang Ju's strength, Xiao Chen was confident in his ability to kill Wang Ju. Even though Wang Ju's strength wasn't weak, Xiao Chen was still confident in his ability to kill Wang Ju. The fierce battle continued without end, and as he watched Xiao Chen and Wang Ju in battle, Feng Ju asked at this moment, "Do you think Xiao Chen can kill Wang Ju?" Feng Ju was obviously asking Long Yang. Long Yang grinned when he heard this, and he replied without the slightest worry. The two of them aren't on the same level at all. Even though Wang Ju's cultivation is at the perfection of the Tao Emperor realm, it isn't difficult for brother Xiao Chen to kill him. Long Yang's discerning ability was extremely experienced, and he'd instantly seen through their strengths. Xiao Chen didn't fear Wang Ju's attacks at all because he possessed the tempered battle body. The swift recovery ability of the tempered battle body allowed Xiao Chen to have the confidence to go head-on against Wang Ju. Xiao Chen didn't pay any attention to Wang Ju's attacks at all, and he didn't even have any intention of dodging Wang Ju's attacks. He fought with his life on the line. Xiao Chen was ferocious while Wang Ju was extremely aggrieved. Xiao Chen dared to go head-on against him and dared to exchange injuries with him, but Wang Ju didn't dare. Wang Ju could only choose to dodge when facing Xiao Chen's attacks, but in this way, he'd naturally lost the initiative. He gradually fell into a disadvantageous position. At the same time, Wang Ju noticed to his surprise that the injuries he'd inflicted on Xiao Chen had actually healed in a short period of time. Wang Ju's expression became unsightly when he faced Xiao Chen's terrifying recovery ability, and he was extremely shocked in his heart. How could this be possible? Xiao Chen paid no attention to Wang Ju's shock. At this moment, his attacks grew more and more ruthless, and as the battle continued, more and more people gathered in the surroundings. As many as dozens of disciples of the heavenly Yin-Yang sect who were imprisoned in the Sunless Mountain gathered. They looked at the two sides fighting fiercely with puzzled expressions. What was going on? They didn't know what was going on, and under everyone's gaze, about half an hour passed. Xiao Chen was still in peak condition, and Wang Ju was already seriously injured. Wang Ju naturally couldn't be Xiao Chen's opponent. Wang Ju's sword slashed down. Seeing that there was no way to dodge Xiao Chen's sword, Wang Ju shouted in horror, "Xiao Chen, you can't kill me. The disciples of the heavenly Yin-Yang sect are forbidden from killing each other. If you kill me, you won't be able to escape. Today, I'll make up for the 2 chapters 10. This is the first chapter. Please collect it. Please recommend it." Chapter 1266. Wang Ju cried out in horror in the face of Xiao Chen's fatal strike. However, Xiao Chen completely ignored his cries. The moment the 4 of them attacked Green Bamboo and Siju, their fates had already been decided. Although the 4 of them were the prospective holy sons of the Taiyang sect, in Xiao Chen's heart, they were far inferior to Green Bamboo and Siju. Therefore, when Wang Ju begged for mercy, Xiao Chen's sword sliced across Wang Ju's neck without the slightest hesitation. Instantly, a bloody head flew into the air. Wang Ju was killed. Seeing this scene, the surrounding people were dumbfounded. How was this possible? Where did Xiao Chen get the courage to kill Wang Ju? No one could believe that Wang Ju was killed just like that. Moreover, he died in the Sunless Mountain. Xiao Chen ignored the surrounding people's shock. Killing Wang Ju was just collecting some interest in advance for Xiao Chen. The person who deserved to be killed the most was still Bai Churan. However, Xiao Chen didn't have the strength to face Bai Churan head-on for the time being. But it wouldn't be long before Xiao Chen personally beheaded Bai Churan. He had already decided to use Bai Churan's head to help him become a chosen on the saint rankings. The day Xiao Chen became a chosen on the saint rankings would be the day Bai Churan's head fell to the ground. Xiao Chen's expression was calm. He didn't show much emotion about killing Wang Ju. Although Wang Ju was the prospective holy son of the Taiyang sect and his strength was enough to become a chosen in the North Star boundary, compared to Xiao Chen, Wang Ju's strength was still inferior. Coupled with the terrifying self-healing ability of the tempered battle body's 3rd level, Wang Ju was even less of a match. Putting away the dustless sword, Xiao Qin glanced indifferently at Wang Ju's corpse, then turned around and went to Long Yang and Feng Ju's side. He had no intention of helping Qin Ling and the other two because their battle was nearing its end. The outcome was already decided, so there was no need for Xiao Qin to intervene. Without any surprise, Qin Ling and the other two finished their battles one after another in half an hour. In this way, Wang Ju and the other three prospective holy sons were all killed without exception. 4 prospective holy sons had died in a row, and the people watching from afar were already scared out of their wits. This was simply too crazy. He actually dared to kill the prospective holy sons of the heavenly Yin and Taiyang sects, and it was in the Sunless Mountain. No one dared to approach Xiao Qin's group due to their shock and fear. In response, Xiao Qin was also happy to be free. He glanced at the corpses of Wang Ju and the other three again before speaking in an indifferent voice. "Let's go." Since the person had already been killed, there was naturally no need to continue staying in the Sunless Mountain. With Yinyangzi's token in hand, Xiao Qin's group smoothly left the Sunless Mountain. The experts of the heavenly Yin and Taiyang sects guarding the Sunless Mountain quickly discovered the corpses of Wang Ju and the other three and immediately reported the matter. Not caring about the aftermath, Xiao Qin's result was very simple. That was to kill Wang Ju and the other three and return to 100 Flower Fairies Cave. Originally, Xiao Qin, who had already become the prospective holy son of the heavenly Yin and Taiyang sects, could have his own cave, but Xiao Qin refused. He could live with 100 Flower Fairy and the other two girls, and there was no need to prepare a separate cave. When Xiao Qin's group returned, Qin Shuru and the other three girls were already waiting. Everyone took a seat in the front hall, and Tian Yu looked at Xiao Qin and asked, "How was it, husband?" Hearing Tian Yu's words, Xiao Qin nodded and replied, "It went very smoothly." Seeing Xiao Qin nod, the 4 girls secretly sighed in relief. As for Green Bamboo, Si Ju, and the others on the side, they revealed a look of relief. They didn't feel the slightest bit of guilt for killing Wang Ju and the other three, nor were they afraid of being punished by the heavenly Yin and Taiyang sects. Compared to Xiao Qin's group, at this moment, in the depths of the punishment hall of the heavenly Yin and Taiyang sects, the punishment hall master lived in a cave. A white-haired old man sat cross-legged in a secret room. This person was the punishment hall master of the heavenly Yin and Taiyang sects. His surname was Qin and his name was Guang. He was a half-step great saint expert. Originally, he was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed, but at this moment, a punishment hall saint quickly walked in and said to Qin Guang, who was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed, "Hall master, it's not good. Something happened on the Sunless Mountain." Qin Guang slowly opened his eyes when he heard the saint. To everyone's surprise, Qin Guang's eyes were actually completely blank and had no pupils. The punishment hall master, one of the few experts of the heavenly Yin and Taiyang sects, was actually blind. Of course, this wasn't a secret in the heavenly Yin and Taiyang sects. Some people even said that Qin Guang's eyes were blind, but his heart wasn't. Qin Guang's originally expressionless eyes suddenly lit up. "Speak slowly," Qin Guang said indifferently. He signaled the saint to not be anxious and to speak slowly. Hearing this, the saint took a deep breath and then told Qin Guang everything in detail. From how Xiao Qin and the others entered the Sunless Mountain to how they left, and even what happened in the Sunless Mountain, the punishment hall had specially investigated and completely restored the truth of the matter. Thus, the saint told Qin Guang everything truthfully. After hearing the saint's account, Qin Guang's expression didn't change much. He still said calmly, "In that case, Xiao Qin entered the Sunless Mountain with senior brother's token?" Yes, the deacon in charge of guarding the Sunless Mountain also carefully checked the token and confirmed that it was real. "This is certain." Hearing this, the saint nodded respectfully. Yinyangzi's token was 100% authentic. There was no possibility of Xiao Chen faking it. Hearing this, Qin Guang was silent for a moment, then waved his hand and said, "I understand. You may leave. There's no need to do anything for the time being." Logically speaking, since Xiao Chen and the others had killed 4 prospective saints in a row, the punishment hall would definitely take action to capture them. However, since Qin Guang had ordered them to bide their time, the punishment hall naturally couldn't disobey. The saint respectfully bowed and nodded, then left the room. Only Qin Guang was left in the dimly lit room. At this moment, Qin Guang whispered softly, "Senior brother, you've made your choice in the end. However, to be able to make you give up by Xiao Chen is obviously not simple. Unfortunately, you can only choose one of the two. A mountain can't accommodate 2 tigers." When Qin Guang heard that Xiao Chen entered the Sunless Mountain with Yinyangzi's token, he already understood what was going on. Obviously, Xiao Chen and the others had killed Wang Ju and the others with Yinyangzi's consent. Otherwise, Xiao Chen and the others wouldn't even have been able to enter the Sunless Mountain. Since Yinyangzi had agreed, Qin Guang naturally knew what to do. Chapter 2. Please collect, please vote, please recommend. Chapter 1267. In this world, there was no way paper could cover fire. Therefore, even though the punishment hall kept the matter of Xiao Chen and the others a secret, there were still people who learned about what had happened in Sunless Mountain the next day, including Baichuran. Inside the cave, Baichuran smashed everything in the room and roared furiously, "Damn it, Xiao Chen, you're courting death." Early in the morning, Baichuran learned that Xiao Chen and the others had killed Wang Ju and the others on Sunless Mountain. Baichuran was immediately enraged when she heard the news. To vent her anger, she even killed 2 servants in her cave abode. For Baichuran, the reason why he was so angry was not because Wang Ju and the others had been killed, but because Xiao Chen had dared to kill them. Moreover, he had directly rushed into Sunless Mountain to do so. This was undoubtedly a slap to his own face, making Baichuran feel ashamed. Baichuran was venting her anger. In the room, there was another person besides Baichuran. This person was wearing the Holy Sun uniform of the heavenly Yin-Yang sect. His face was like jade and his looks were not bad. However, his skin was as white and smooth as a woman's, and there was a hint of yin-qi between his brows. He clearly lacked the masculinity of a man. This young man who looked like a woman was called Baichuan. It was a very feminine name, but he was a real man. This much was certain. At the same time, Baichuan was Baichuran's younger brother. Of the 2 brothers, Baichuan's cultivation talent was clearly inferior to Baichuran's. Otherwise, he wouldn't just be a quasi-holy son. Moreover, among the many holy sons of the heavenly Yin Sun sect, Baichuan was ranked at the bottom. His strength couldn't even compare to Wang Ju's group of 4. However, even so, the disciples of the heavenly Yin and Yang sect were still extremely fearful of Baichuan. This fear did not come from Baichuan's identity, nor did it come from Baichuan's strength. Instead, it came from her methods and intelligence. There was a stark contrast between Baichuan and Baichuran. Baichuan was extremely talented, and had become a candidate on the saint rankings at such a young age. However, while his talent was extraordinary, his intelligence was also lacking. He had a violent temper and didn't have a plan when doing things. He only knew how to fight and kill. It could be said that Baichuan was a brute. As for Baichuan, he might not be as talented in cultivation compared to his brother, but his mind and schemes were endless. Most of the time, Baichuan was the one who handled many of Baichuran's matters, and he never made the slightest mistake. Because of Baichuan's intelligence and ruthlessness, many disciples of the Yin and Yang sect privately called Baichuan the White Snake, implying that Baichuan was as insidious as a snake. He would always stare at his enemies in the dark, waiting for an opportunity to kill them in one strike. Bai Chiyue didn't say anything to console the furious Bai Churan. She waited until Bai Churan stopped what she was doing before walking up to Bai Churan. Bai Chuyue's voice was calm, and there was not the slightest hint of sadness or joy. Hearing Bai Chuyue's words, Bai Churan nodded with a gloomy expression. Seeing Bai Churan nod, Bai Chuyue said indifferently, "Brother, this matter isn't as simple as it seems." Compared to Bai Churan's anger, Bai Chuyue had clearly seen something deeper from this matter. Hearing his brother's words, Bai Churan's expression became serious, and he said in a deep voice, "Come, let's talk in the secret room." The two brothers went to the secret room. It was airtight and there was no need to worry about anyone eavesdropping. Moreover, there were many formations around the secret room. As long as someone approached, Bai Churan would be able to sense it immediately. In the dark secret room, Bai Churan and Bai Chuyue sat opposite each other. Bai Churan looked at his younger brother and asked, "Speak." Bai Chuyue nodded slightly and said, "According to the information, the reason Xiao Chun and the others could enter Sunless Mountain was because they had the Ancestor's token. Moreover, the token is confirmed to be real. In other words, the Ancestor personally gave Xiao Chun the token. That's why Xiao Chun and the others could enter Sunless Mountain so smoothly and attack Wang Ju and the others," Bai Chuyue said slowly. Hearing that, Bai Churan was somewhat confused and said impatiently, "Don't beat around the bush. If you have something to say, just say it." Clearly, Bai Churan still hadn't reacted. Seeing that, Bai Chuyue's expression darkened and he said solemnly, "In other words, the Ancestor tacitly approved of this entire matter. The Ancestor tacitly approved of Xiao Chun and the others killing Wang Ju and the others. The Ancestor tacitly approved? Why? Wang Ju and the others are quasi-chosen. How could the Ancestor tacitly approve of Xiao Chun killing them?" Bai Churan said in disbelief. It had to be said that Bai Churan's intelligence was indeed worrying. Seeing that, Bai Chuyue could only make things clearer. "Actually, all of this is related to you, big brother. The matter between you and Xiao Chun is now known throughout the entire Taiyang sect. The Ancestor clearly knows about this matter as well. There's no room for reconciliation between the two of you, so the Ancestor naturally has to choose one of you. Judging from the current situation, the Ancestor should have chosen Xiao Chun and given up on you, big brother. So, Xiao Chun can kill Wang Ju and the others this time. In that case, if Xiao Chun kills you in the future, the Ancestor won't say anything either," Bai Chuyue said slowly. At this point, no matter how stupid Bai Churan was, he knew that the Ancestor Yinyangzi had given up on him. But why? He was a chosen on the holy rankings. How could Yinyangzi give him up and choose that outsider, Xiao Chun? Why? Why did the Ancestor choose Xiao Chun? Bai Churan couldn't help but ask in confusion, unwillingness, and anger. Facing Bai Chuyue's question, a cold glint flickered in his eyes. It's probably related to Xiao Chun's talent. It had to be said that Bai Chuyue was indeed smart. He hadn't even met Xiao Chun yet, but he'd already guessed most of what had happened. He'd even guessed why Yinyangzi had chosen Xiao Chun, and it was completely correct. Logically speaking, Xiao Chun's combat strength and cultivation were inferior to Bai Churan's, but Yinyangzi had still chosen Xiao Chun in the end. Then there was only one possibility, and that was that Xiao Chun's talent was higher than Bai Churan's. And Bai Churan was already a chosen on the holy rankings. For Yinyangzi to choose Xiao Chun based on his talent alone, it was clear that Xiao Chun's talent wasn't just a little bit higher than Bai Churan's. Instead, it was on a whole new level. Chapter 3. Please collect, please vote, please recommend. Chapter 1268. Bai Chuyue looked at Bai Churan and said in an extremely serious tone, "Brother, if the Ancestor chose Xiao Chun based on his talent alone, then Xiao Chun's talent must be at least 99 meters tall. He can't be allowed to live, or your life will be in danger if he grows. At that time, it won't just be you, but our entire Bai family might be doomed. It was certain that Xiao Chen's talent had definitely reached 99 meters tall. That was the only reason why Yin Yangzi still chose Xiao Chen despite not having an advantage in strength and cultivation. A trace of killing intent appeared on Bai Churan's face when she heard Bai Chuyue's words. She absolutely believed her younger brother's words. Since that was the case, then Xiao Chen really couldn't be allowed to live. Bai Churan didn't think too much about it and said coldly, "All right, I'll personally kill Xiao Chen. I want to see how capable a genius who hasn't grown up is." Bai Churan had already decided to disregard everything and personally kill Xiao Chen when she heard Bai Chuyue's words. She absolutely wouldn't give him any chance to grow. However, as soon as Bai Churan finished speaking, Bai Chuyue spoke up to stop her. "Brother, wait a moment." "What? Didn't you say to kill Xiao Chen as soon as possible?" Bai Chuyue stopped her. Bai Churan asked in confusion. "I did say that. But brother, think about it. Can you still kill Xiao Chen now? I believe the ancestor has already arranged for people to closely monitor your every move. As long as you want to attack Xiao Chen, the ancestor will definitely stop you immediately. So, brother, you can't personally kill Xiao Chen." Bai Churan's thoughts on killing Xiao Chen were very simple. Although Yin Yangzi had chosen Xiao Chen, if she could successfully kill Xiao Chen, then what could Yin Yangzi say in the face of a dead person? After all, Yin Yangzi couldn't possibly kill her just because she killed Xiao Chen, right? To put it bluntly, a dead genius had no value. At that time, Yin Yangzi would naturally choose to protect Bai Churan. Bai Churan's thoughts were very good and there was nothing wrong with them. However, all of this was based on the premise that she could successfully kill Xiao Chen. If Bai Churan failed to kill Xiao Chen, then the matter would become very troublesome. That was why Bai Chuyue's opinion. Compared to Bai Churan, Bai Chuyue's thoughts were clearly much more meticulous. In her opinion, since Yin Yangzi had chosen to side with Xiao Chen, then under the premise that she knew Xiao Chen wasn't a match for Bai Churan, how could she possibly not take any protective measures? That was clearly impossible. Since Yin Yangzi wanted to protect Xiao Chen, then the best way was naturally to send people to monitor Bai Churan. Therefore, once Bai Churan attacked Xiao Chen, Yin Yangzi would definitely receive the news immediately. At that time, with Yin Yangzi's help, Bai Churan's chances of success were practically zero. That was why Bai Chuyue said that Bai Churan couldn't kill Xiao Chen herself. Bai Churan calmed down when she heard that. Then, she said helplessly to Bai Chuyue, "Then what do you think we should do?" "Actually, it's very simple. The heavenly Yin Valley is about to open. I'll also enter when the time comes," said Bai Chuyue with a smile. As the prospective chosen of the Heavenly Note Solar Sect, Bai Chuyue naturally had to enter the Heavenly Eagle Valley. Bai Chuyue's plan was to kill Xiao Chen in the Heavenly Eagle Valley. This was because there were no experts from the Heavenly Yin Solar Sect in the Heavenly Yin Valley, only numerous disciples. When the time came, Yin Yangzi would clearly be too far away to help. However, Bai Churan was a little worried when she heard Bai Chuyue's words. "But if I'm not around, who will you get to do it? Xiao Chen's strength isn't simple. Moreover, he has a group of people from the Sacred Palace with him. They can't be underestimated either. The experts from the Heavenly Yin Solar Sect wouldn't enter the Heavenly Yin Valley. As a result, Yin Yangzi's protection of Xiao Chen would be minimal. Similarly, Bai Churan wouldn't enter the Heavenly Yin Valley this time either." Bai Chuyue wasn't worried at all in the face of Bai Churan's doubts. "Don't worry, brother. Zhu Mujue is somewhat related to me and owes me a favor. With him and my plan, Xiao Chen won't be able to escape even if he has 3 heads and 6 arms." A wisp of a smile appeared on Bai Churan's face when he heard Bai Chuyue's words. He nodded slightly and said, "That's good. Then I'll leave it to you. I don't want to see Xiao Chen again." "Don't worry, brother. I guarantee that Xiao Qin won't be able to leave the heavenly Yin Valley. Bai Chuyue nodded with a smile. Zhu Mujue. His name was renowned in the heavenly Yin solar sect. It was none other than the fact that he was the #1 candidate of the heavenly Yin solar sect. His strength was only inferior to Bai Churan and the other chosen on the hallowed rankings. He was worthy of being called the #3 expert in the younger generation of the heavenly Yin solar sect. Just like Bai Churan, he'd attained perfection in the Tao Emperor realm as well. There were over 100 candidates in the heavenly Yin solar sect, and there was naturally a difference in strength between them. At the same time, there was a ranking as well. Zhu Mujue's position as the #1 candidate of the heavenly Yin solar sect wasn't exaggerated at all. Bai Churan had fought Zhu Mujue in the past, so he knew how strong Zhu Mujue was. Unfortunately, Zhu Mujue had a stubborn temper and probably didn't like interacting too much with others. So, Bai Churan had been unable to rope him in. Of course, it wasn't just Bai Churan. Even the other chosen of the heavenly Yin solar sect hadn't been able to rope him in. Now that Bai Churan had said that Zhu Mujue would be able to fight, Bai Churan was naturally at ease. With Zhu Mujue's help, Xiao Qin would definitely lose. Moreover, Bai Churan was secretly plotting against him this time. Bai Churan was very well aware of her younger brother's ability. Once he did, it would be like a bolt of lightning. As if she could already see the scene of Xiao Qin being killed, the flames of rage in Bai Churan's heart quickly vanished, and an icy cold smile appeared on her face. While the Bai brothers were secretly plotting how to eliminate Xiao Qin, another chosen of the heavenly Yin solar sect resided in another abode not too far away from Bai Churan's abode. In the front hall of the abode, a beautiful girl in a black dress sat on the main seat. However, her eyes were filled with arrogance as if she was an empress. She was the other chosen of the heavenly Yin solar sect, and her name was Yun Kunyo. Compared to Bai Churan, Yun Kunyo's status in the heavenly Yin solar sect was higher and more dangerous. There was no other reason. Yun Kunyo was stronger than Bai Churan, and her ranking on the Saint rankings was much higher than Bai Churan's. Chapter 4. Please collect, please vote, please recommend. Chapter 1269. Although Bai Churan and Yun Kunyo were both chosen of the Yin and Yang sects, the difference between them was enormous. It was common knowledge that Bai Churan was merely ranked 93 on the hallowed rankings, but Yun Kunyo was ranked 21 on the hallowed rankings. The gap between 21 and 98 was obvious. Even though it wasn't sufficient to crush Bai Churan, if Bai Churan were to fight Yun Kunyo, then there was no doubt that Yun Kunyo would definitely be the victor. It was precisely because of the huge difference between their rankings that Yun Kunyo had never taken Bai Churan seriously, and Bai Churan had never dared to provoke Yun Kunyo of her own accord. Yun Kunyo sat on the main seat and tapped the wooden table beside her with her right hand. She looked indifferently at a female disciple before her. Xiao Qin used the Patriarch's command medallion to enter Mount Sunless. Then, he killed Wang Ju and the others. Yes, but the punishment hall hasn't done anything yet, replied the female disciple respectfully. The female disciple replied politely. From her attire, it was not difficult to tell that she was a candidate of the Yin and Yang sect. She was called Lianyao, and it was said that she was an orphan that Yun Kunyo had picked up when she was young. She had entered the Yin and Yang sects with Yun Kunyo, and could be said to be the person closest to Yun Kunyo. At the same time, she was ranked second among the candidates of the Yin and Yang sects, and her strength was second only to Zhu Mujue. A day had already passed, but the punishment hall still hadn't done anything. Yun Kunyo smiled disdainfully when she heard Lianyao's words. That's right. It's impossible for the punishment hall to do anything about this. But is there anything wrong with Bai Churan? Yun Kunyo's expression was full of contempt when she spoke of Bai Churan, as if she looked down on the person who was also ranked on the Saint rankings. Lien Yao's expression didn't change in the face of Yun Kunyo's disdain. Perhaps she was used to it. After all, it wasn't the first time Yun Kunyo had shown such disdain. Even in front of Bai Churan, Yun Kunyo had never concealed it. There's been no movement from Bai Churan, Lien Yao replied. Bai Churan is an idiot. The patriarch has also made his choice this time. Compared to this idiot, I'm more interested in Shao Qin. All right, you may leave, Yun Kunyo said indifferently after hearing Lien Yao's answer. Lien Yao respectfully withdrew when she heard Yun Kunyo's words. Yun Kunyo remained seated in the hall. No one knew what she was thinking, but a smile appeared on her face as she muttered to herself, "That's right. Shao Qin, this is interesting. And Long Yang, Feng Ju, you two have come to the heavenly Yin Yang sect. No matter what, I should be a good host." No one knew what Yun Kunyo was thinking. At this moment, Shao Qin was sitting across from Chun Ling and Long Qing in his cave dwelling. Chun Ling and Long Qing had taken the initiative to find Shao Qin and said that they had something to tell Shao Qin. Moreover, this time, even Qin Shuru, Qin Yao, and Qin Luo had been dismissed by Chun Ling. Looking at Chun Ling, who looked as if he was facing a great enemy, Shao Qin was also curious. What exactly did he want to talk to him about that even Qin Shuero and the other three girls couldn't listen to? After the three of them sat down, Shao Qin took the initiative to ask Qin Ling, "Big brother, what do you want to say that requires you to be so serious?" Long Yang has looked for second sister more than once. Now that we're in the central world, I think it's time to tell you two something, Qin Ling said in a deep voice when he heard Shao Qin's words. The reason why he was so serious was because Qin Ling wanted to tell Shao Qin and Long Qing about his background and Long Qing's background. Long Qing didn't have any memories of her background. After all, before she was born, she had been brought to the northern star boundaries Tianqian continent by Qin Ling. The first person Long Qing saw when she was born was Shao Qin, so Long Qing didn't know anything about her background. Shao Qin and Long Qing's expressions turned serious when they heard Qin Ling's words. It seemed that their big brother was finally going to be honest. They had asked so many times before, but he didn't say anything. Shao Qin was naturally extremely curious about Qin Ling and Long Qing's background, so he calmed down and waited quietly for Qin Ling's answer. Facing their gazes, Qin Ling didn't keep them in suspense this time. Instead, he spoke bluntly. "Let's talk about second sister first. Second sister was indeed brought to the Tianqian continent by me from the central world." He first talked about Long Qing's death. According to Qin Ling, Long Qing was secretly brought out by him from the dragon race back then. He already knew that Long Qing was a pure-blooded dragon. However, there were naturally different factions in the dragon race, and Long Qing was the true bloodline of the Dragon Emperor. According to Qin Ling, Long Qing was the biological daughter of the Dragon Emperor. Back then, Qin Ling needed a treasure to save someone. Only the dragon race in the entire central world had this treasure, so Qin Ling had no choice but to take the risk and enter the dragon race to find an opportunity to steal this treasure. For this operation, Qin Ling prepared for a long time and thought that everything was foolproof. That was why he infiltrated the beast race's territory. In fact, as he was fully prepared, Qin Ling successfully infiltrated the dragon race. But it was a pity that Qin Ling underestimated the dragon race's strength. When he was only a step away from the treasure, Qin Ling was discovered by the dragon race's powerful beings. Next, he was naturally hunted down by the dragon race. As he fled, he searched for an opportunity to escape. But it was a pity that Qin Ling didn't succeed in the end and was forced into a large hall by the dragon race's powerful beings. It was also in the hall that Qin Ling discovered Long Qing. Of course, at that time, Long Qing wasn't born yet. In order to survive, Qin Ling used Long Qing's life to threaten the dragon race's powerful beings. It was also after that that Qin Ling found out that the hall he barged into was the dragon race's dragon whelp hall, which was specifically responsible for taking care of unborn young dragons. He thought that with Long Qing in his hands, he would be able to escape unscathed. But he didn't expect that in the end, because of the Dragon Emperor's attack, Chun Ling fell short of success and was even seriously injured. At the critical moment, Chun Ling burned his own cultivation and forcefully entered the void. Only then was he lucky enough to escape. But it was also because of this that Chun Ling brought Long Qing to the heavenly Chen continent. Xiao Qin knew what happened after that. Long Qing was born in the heavenly Chen continent and Chun Ling was also reborn in the heavenly Chen continent. After listening to Chun Ling's narration, Xiao Chun asked curiously, since second sister is the Dragon Emperor's biological daughter, why would the Dragon Emperor ignore her safety and attack Big Brother? Could it be that he's not afraid that Big Brother will act out of desperation and we'll all die together? Chapter 5. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1270. Back then, Chun Ling had used the unborn Long Qing as a hostage. He had thought that he would be able to escape unscathed. However, who would have thought that Long Qing's father, the Dragon Emperor, would completely ignore him and attack him? This made Xiao Chen feel very strange. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Chun Ling's face revealed a hint of self-mockery as he said, "Speaking of which, it's my fault. However, in my panic, I made a careless mistake. I forgot that the Dragon Clan is a clan that will never accept threat." The Dragon Clan was definitely more arrogant than the other. Their arrogance seemed to be innate. This was especially true for the pure-blooded Dragon Clan. They were extremely arrogant. This was not difficult to see from Long Qing and Long Yang. Back then, when Chun Ling wanted to use Long Qing to threaten the Dragon Clan, he had completely angered the Dragon Emperor. Therefore, the Dragon Emperor did not care about Long Qing's life at all and chose to attack him directly. Perhaps in the Dragon Emperor's eyes, as his descendant, even if Long Qing had not been born, it would be better for her to die than to be threatened. This way, at least the Dragon Clan's dignity would be preserved. Hearing Chun Ling's words, Xiao Chen was a little speechless. This Dragon Emperor was really cold-blooded. He could even disregard the life and death of his own daughter. While thinking, Xiao Chen secretly glanced at Long Qing. He found that Long Qing still had a calm expression on her face. It was as if what had just been said had nothing to do with her. She had never seen her father before. Therefore, Long Qing could be said to have no feelings for the Dragon Emperor. Therefore, even if Chun Ling had told her what had happened back then, Long Qing did not feel much, let alone resent Chun Ling. After all, without Chun Ling, Long Qing would not have met Xiao Chen. The three of them would not have become sworn brothers. Moreover, Long Qing was very satisfied with her current life. Therefore, Long Qing did not want to delve into the past. She did not want to think too much about it. Seeing that Long Qing's expression was still normal, Xiao Chen let out a sigh of relief. Since they were talking about Long Qing, the next topic was naturally Chun Ling's background. Chun Ling was the reincarnation of an almighty being. This was something that both Xiao Chen and Long Qing knew. However, his identity had always been a mystery, and Chun Ling had always been tight-lipped about it. However, this time, before Xiao Chen could ask, Chun Ling took the initiative to speak. There are 3 masters of the human race. You should already know this. Among the 3 masters, the Xianyuan clan is the only one that has successfully become one of the 3 masters of the human race. I am a member of the Xianyuan clan. In the Central World, the 3 masters of the human clan were the Taiyang sect of Heavenly Yin, the Haotian Alliance, and the Xianyuan clan. Among them, the Xianyuan clan was the only clan that had successfully become one of the 3 masters. In his previous life, Chun Ling was a member of the Xianyuan clan. Moreover, he was one of the 3 great elders of the Xianyuan clan. His status was second only to the Xianyuan clan's ancestor. As a powerful and ancient clan, the Xianyuan clan naturally valued their bloodline. Chunling was the direct descendant of the Xianyuan clan's main bloodline. In his previous life, Chunling had made great strides until he became one of the 3 great elders of the Xianyuan clan. His cultivation had also reached the limit of the half-step Great Saint realm. He was only 1 step away from breaking through to the Great Saint realm. Unfortunately, because of the trip to the Dragon Clan, Chunling was severely injured by the Dragon Emperor. Under such heavy injuries, Chunling could not care about anything else and directly tore through the void to escape. In the end, he drifted through the void all the way to the heavenly Chun continent. However, due to his heavy injuries, he died. Fortunately, a remnant of his soul was preserved. Thus, he had the chance to be reborn. Chunling did not say much about his identity. He simply said that he was the master of the Xianyuan clan and had once been one of the 3 great elders of the Xianyuan clan. It was an extremely simple statement. Hearing this, Longqing said thoughtfully, "The Xianyuan clan. So, big brother, are you going to return to the Xianyuan clan this time?" Since Chunling was a member of the Xianyuan clan, it was understandable that he chose to return to the Xianyuan clan. In the face of Longqing's question, Chunling fell into silence. Moreover, Shao Qin keenly caught a flash of hatred in Chunling's eyes. Did Chunling bear a grudge against the Xianyuan clan? Shao Qin guessed in his heart, but it was not appropriate for him to ask. After a long while, Chunling took the initiative to speak. "I won't return to the Xianyuan clan. However, I do need to find time to make a trip back to the Xianyuan clan because there are some things that I haven't finished." He directly stated that he would not return to the Xianyuan clan, but he still needed to make a trip back. When he said that, Chunling's tone was very indifferent. There was no joy or sorrow in his voice, but Shao Qin was certain that there was definitely something between Chunling and the Xianyuan clan. Perhaps it was because of this that Chunling did not have any good feelings towards the Xianyuan clan. He was even unwilling to admit that he was a member of the Xianyuan clan. Shao Qin's guess was actually correct. Chunling did indeed hold a grudge against the Xianyuan clan. Since the heavens had given him a chance to be reborn, Chunling only planned to continue living with his current identity. It was impossible for him to return to the Xianyuan clan. With that, before Shao Qin and Longqing could reply, Chunling looked at Longqing. A sliver of bitterness flashed through his eyes before he smiled gently. "I definitely won't return to the Xianyuan clan. However, if you have the chance, you can go to the Dragon Clan to have a look. I don't think the Dragon Emperor will do anything to you. Furthermore, you can obtain many benefits if you go to the Dragon Clan. You should know that the cultivation methods of the Dragon Clan and the Human Clan are completely different. Many of the unique cultivation methods of the Dragon Clan can only be used in the Dragon Clan. Therefore, going to the Dragon Clan will only be beneficial to you. Find a time to talk to Longyang." Chunling did not want to return to the Xianyuan clan, but he persuaded Longqing to go to the Dragon Clan if she had the chance. After all, there was nothing between Longqing and the Dragon Clan. Longqing had not even been born yet. Furthermore, the Dragon Emperor had not cared about Longqing's life and insisted on attacking. No matter how determined he was, he would probably feel guilty towards Longqing. After all, no matter what, Longqing was the Dragon Emperor's daughter. Over the past few years, Longqing had relied on her powerful bloodline to make remarkable progress. However, the further she progressed, the harder it was to awaken the power of her bloodline, especially for a high-grade bloodline like the Dragon Clan. As such, if Longqing wanted to achieve great things, she had to go to the Dragon Clan. Only in the Dragon Clan would Longqing be able to complete her transformation. Furthermore, if Longqing was willing to return, the Dragon Emperor would definitely not object. This was the main reason. However, after hearing Chunling's words, Longqing did not think much of it. She shook her head and rejected him directly. "I don't want to go back. I think it's pretty good now. Why would I go back?" Just like Chunling, Long Qing did not want to return to the Dragon Clan. Seeing this, Chen Ling smiled bitterly, then shook his head and did not say anything else. Chapter 6. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendation. Chapter 1271. Long Qing was also unwilling to return to the Dragon Clan. However, her situation was different from Chen Ling's. Hearing this, Chen Ling shook his head and smiled bitterly. However, Xiao Chen said, "Second sister, I'll go to the Dragon Clan with you when the time comes." If Long Qing wanted to become stronger, she had to go to the Dragon Clan. This was something that could not be helped. Therefore, Xiao Chen directly suggested that he and Long Qing would return to the Dragon Clan together. Hearing this, Long Qing was silent for a moment before nodding her head in agreement. If Xiao Chen were to accompany her back, then Long Qing would be able to accept it. After this conversation, Xiao Chen had a certain understanding of Chen Ling and Long Qing's past. Although this topic was a bit heavy at the beginning, the three of them were soon in a good mood again. They chatted and laughed. After all, this was all in the past. There was no point in dwelling on it now. Moreover, the three of them were all carefree people. They would not take it to heart. After killing Wang Ju and the other three, the punishment hall did not make any moves. Baichuran also did not make any moves. After that conversation, Xiao Chen's days were peaceful and comfortable. Every day, other than cultivating, he would accompany Qin Shuru and the other three girls. Of course, during this time, Xiao Chen also accompanied Long Qing and Long Yang to have a good talk. Long Yang did not have any special thoughts about Long Qing. Firstly, he was curious about Long Qing and wanted to confirm Long Qing's identity with his own eyes. Now that her identity was confirmed, Long Yang wanted to let Long Qing return to the Dragon Clan. Unfortunately, Long Yang's suggestion was rejected by Long Qing without hesitation. However, after that conversation, Long Qing also said that she could return to the Dragon Clan, but she would not live there forever. Compared to the Dragon Clan, she was more willing to live with Xiao Chen and Chen Ling. Long Yang did not insist on Long Qing's insistence. Since Long Qing was willing to admit her identity as a pure-blood dragon and return to the Dragon Clan, that was enough. As for where she would live after Long Qing, that was not the main point. Moreover, Long Yang's personality was relatively easygoing. Under normal circumstances, he would not force others to do anything. They had already decided that when the time came, Xiao Chen and Chen Ling would accompany Long Qing back to the Dragon Clan. Of course, now was not the time. The heavenly Yin Valley was about to open. Xiao Chen and the others did not want to give up this opportunity. While waiting for the heavenly Yin Valley to open, Xiao Chen and the others lived quietly. At the same time, they were constantly familiarizing themselves with the environment of the heavenly Yin Taiyang sect. Several days passed in a row. The days were very peaceful. Baichuran also seemed to have disappeared. She did not come to find trouble with Xiao Chen again. However, on this day, someone that Xiao Chen did not expect came. It was the other chosen on the saint ranking of the heavenly Yin Taiyang sect, Yun Kunyo. Yun Kunyo had taken the initiative to visit. Xiao Chen had never seen her before, nor did he know her at all. Fei Mei invited Yun Kunyo into the front hall. Xiao Chen also personally welcomed her in the front hall. Xiao Chen did not show too much respect or flattery towards the undisputed number one person of the heavenly Yin Taiyang sect. Even though Yun Kunyo was very beautiful, Xiao Chen was still extremely calm when facing her. Cupping his hands slightly, Xiao Chen said softly, "Senior Sister Yun, welcome. What's the matter?" She was still wearing a black dress and her expression was still indifferent and arrogant. When she heard Xiao Chen's words, Yun Kunyo glanced at Xiao Chen indifferently without saying anything. After a moment, Yun Kunyo said indifferently, "Not bad. There's hope of replacing that idiot by Chiron." Her evaluation of Xiao Chen was only not bad. After saying that, Yun Kunyo continued. Where are Long Yang and Fengju? I'm here to look for the two of them. Yun Kunyo had not come for Xiao Qin, but for Long Yang and Fengju. Hearing this, Xiao Qian's expression remained unchanged. He called Fei Mei over and said, Take senior sister Yun to Long Yang and Fengju. Xiao Qian did not take Yun Kunyo's arrogance and disdain seriously. Xiao Qian had seen this kind of thing many times. Moreover, he was not a chosen on the saint rankings. Given Yun Kunyo's character, she would definitely look down on him. However, Xiao Qian did not care about this. Instead of caring about other people's attitude, he would rather improve his own strength. Xiao Qian understood this very well. He simply asked Fei Mei to take Yun Kunyo to Long Yang and Fengju. Yun Kunyo did not say anything in response and immediately left with Fei Mei. However, before she left, Yun Kunyo turned her head and said something to Xiao Qian inexplicably. Be careful when opening the heavenly Yin Valley, especially the first prospective chosen, Zhu Mujue. If there's any danger, you can look for Lianyao. Yun Kunyo had clearly received some news and took the initiative to remind Xiao Qian. She even told Xiao Qian that he could look for Lianyao if there was any danger. Xiao Qian cupped his hands and bowed when he heard Yun Kunyo. Then thank you, senior sister Yun. Even though he said that, Xiao Qian had no intention of looking for Yun Kunyo at all. Compared to Bai Qiran, Xiao Qian had no enmity with Yun Kunyo. However, he didn't like this arrogant senior sister of his, nor did he want to owe her any favors. Moreover, if it was Bai Qiran who wanted to deal with him in the heavenly Yin Valley, then it was even more impossible for Xiao Qian to rely on others. So, Xiao Qian had to kill Bai Qiran himself. Xiao Qian had heard of Zhu Mujue's name. He was the first chosen of the heavenly Yin Yang sect. He was the deserving number 3 expert in the younger generation, and he had attained perfection in the Tao Emperor realm. Zhu Mujue was a formidable enemy indeed. However, what did Xiao Qian have to fear? Presently, his cultivation had already reached the limits of perfection in the Tao Emperor realm. Moreover, Xiao Qian was at least 80% confident in breaking through to perfection in the heavenly Yin Valley this time. So long as he broke through, Xiao Qian wouldn't have to fear Zhu Mujue at all. A strand of cold light flashed through Xiao Qian's eyes after he sent Yun Kunyo off. Even though Yun Kunyo hadn't said anything just now, since she'd told him to be careful of Zhu Mujue, then Xiao Qian guessed that it was probably Bai Qiran's plan. She wanted him to be in the heavenly Yin Valley. Bai Qiran, no one knows who's going to live or die. Once the heavenly Yin Valley ends, it'll be the time I kill you myself. Xiao Qian could take Zhu Mujue seriously, but he would absolutely not fear him. If he couldn't even deal with a mere Zhu Mujue, then how could he get even with Bai Qiran? So long as he broke through to perfection in the Tao Emperor realm, then he would possess the ability to fight Bai Qiran. At the same time, he would possess the ability to ascend the hallowed rankings. Killing Bai Qiran and ascending the hallowed rankings was Xiao Qian's most important matter right now. Xiao Qian shook his head lightly as he watched Yun Kunyo leave, and he didn't think about it any further. I'll deal with whatever comes my way. In any case, no matter what Bai Qiran's scheme is, all I have to do is improve my strength. Only by improving my strength would I be able to go against Bai Qiran head-on. Begging to be collected, begging to be recommended. Chapter 1272. Xiao Qian did not mind why Yun Kunyo had come looking for Long Yang and Fengju. He did not interfere and asked Fei Mei to bring Yun Kunyo to Long Yang and Fengju's place. Xiao Qian then went to cultivate by himself. While Xiao Qian went to cultivate, Yun Kunyo finally saw Long Yang and Fengju in their courtyard. Long Yang was sitting in the pavilion drinking tea, while Fengju was cultivating by the side. Seeing Yun Kunyo walk over, Long Yang immediately revealed a smile. Oh, isn't this the number 1 beauty of the human race, Yun Kunyo? Why, are you interested in coming here today? Long Yang, who obviously knew Yun Kunyo, spoke with a smile on his face. Compared to Long Yang's enthusiasm, Feng Ju, who was at the side, was clearly much colder. He only said a few words, "What are you doing here?" The three of them knew each other, so Yun Kunyo did not mind Long Yang and Feng Ju's different behavior. She went to sit opposite the two of them. It was worth mentioning that when facing Long Yang and Feng Ju, the arrogance on Yun Kunyo's face was greatly restrained. Thinking about it, although she was ranked 21st on the Saint rankings, she was still far inferior to Long Yang and Feng Ju. As such, in front of Long Yang and Feng Ju, Yun Kunyo really had nothing to be proud of. After taking a seat, Yun Kunyo said indifferently, "The 100 race war is about to begin. The Saint ranking will not be peaceful soon." Now that the 4 astral realms and the central world had merged, they were only waiting for the will of the heavenly way to announce it. The war between the 100 races would instantly erupt. In the end, the 100 race war would only end when one race was ranked above the 100 races. Every time the 100 race war began, the Chosens on the Saint ranking would not be peaceful. At that time, many of the Chosens on the Saint ranking would kill each other and die on a large scale. Due to the uniqueness of the Chosens on the Saint ranking, every time the Great War began, the Chosens on the Saint ranking would form a small battlefield. Because the older generation did not dare to kill the Chosens on the Saint ranking, and the ordinary younger generation was no match for the Chosens on the Saint ranking, soldiers against soldiers, generals against generals. Once the 100 race war began, the Chosens on the Saint ranking would beat each other's opponents. However, what worried Yun Kunyo was that the battle prowess of the human races chosen on the Saint rankings was actually very weak. For example, Yun Kunyo was only ranked 21st on the Saint rankings even though she was the first chosen of the Sky In Sun sect. Yun Kunyo came to find Chosens on the Saint ranking. She hoped that the human and beast race could join forces at least on the battlefield the Chosens on the Saint rankings battle. At least. Hope. Yun Kunyo softly muttered. However, Long Yang and Feng Ju were both smart people. They quickly understood Yun Kunyo's meaning. Feng Ju was the first to open his mouth. "But do you humans have the right to do so?" Feng Ju did not give any face to Yun Kunyo. Yun Kunyo did not say much about it. She was weaker than others. On the other hand, Long Yang's attitude was calm. He smiled meaningfully. "Haha, Yun Kunyo. You shouldn't be thinking about these things. Even if you want to form an alliance, you shouldn't be the one to say it. After all, you're not the first Chosens of the human race." Long Yang did not reject the alliance proposal, but his meaning was clear. Yun Kunyo was not qualified to talk about this because she was not the first Chosens of the human race. Hearing Long Yang's words, Yun Kunyo lowered her voice and said, "You mean you want Xianyuan Baijan to talk to you?" Xianyuan Baijan was the recognized first Chosens of the human race and ranked 10th on the Saint ranking. She thought Long Yang wanted Xianyuan Baijan to talk to him, but Long Yang shook his head and said, "Xianyuan is not qualified. Forget it, now is not the time to talk about this. After all, the 100 race war will start in a few days. This period of time is enough for the human race to change dramatically. When the time comes, we still don't know who will be the first Chosens of the human race." It was not Xianyuan Baijan. In Long Yang's opinion, Xianyuan Baijan was still not qualified. Even Feng Ju could defeat Xianyuan Baijan. Therefore, Xianyuan Baijan was not qualified to talk about this matter. There were some things that Long Yang didn't say out loud, but he sneered in his heart, "Xianyuan, you can't carry the future of the human race, but now there is someone who can. A 99-meter talent. Hee, I wonder what would happen if Brother Shao Chen and Xianyuan were to fight." In Long Yang's heart, only Shao Chen was qualified to talk about an alliance. Of course, it was not now, but after Shao Chen grew up. With a 99-meter tall talent, Xiao Chen's future achievements were far from what Xianyuan Baijian and the other chosens of the human race could compare to. Even Feng Ju was far from Xiao Chen. Yun Kunyo originally wanted to talk about the alliance, but Long Yang directly rejected her. Yun Kunyo did not say anything about it. The three of them exchanged a few indifferent words, and then Yun Kunyo left. Seeing Yun Kunyo leave, Feng Ju said with a complicated expression, "Long Yang, do you really want to form an alliance with the human race?" Although Long Yang seemed to have rejected Yun Kunyo, Feng Ju knew that Long Yang actually wanted to form an alliance with the human race. Hearing Feng Ju's words, Long Yang smiled and said, "If it was before, I would definitely not form an alliance with the human race. After all, the human race is too weak. But it's different now. Since the human race has the strength, an alliance is not impossible." "You mean Xiao Chen?" "But no matter how high Xiao Chen's talent is, he still needs time. When the 100-race war breaks out, how far do you think Xiao Chen can go?" Feng Ju said. "Haha, never underestimate anyone, especially someone like Xiao Chen, who has a 99-meter-tall talent. Don't worry, it won't be long before brother Xiao Chen enters the Saint rankings. When that time comes, you can see the changes on the Saint rankings." Long Yang laughed and said confidently. Although he said that, Long Yang secretly muttered to himself, "The difference between 99 and 98 meters is not as simple as it looks on the surface. The difference is like the difference between heaven and earth." He was full of confidence in Xiao Chen, as if Xiao Chen would soon be on the same level as Long Yang and the other two. Feng Ju curled his lips in disbelief, but did not say anything more. Feng Ju originally did not have any ill feelings towards Xiao Chen. Since Xiao Chen was strong, Feng Ju would not be afraid of him. He would only be happy. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1273. As the strongest person among the younger generation of the beast race and one of the top 3 on the Saint ranking, Long Yang had rejected Yun Kunyo's proposal. It wasn't that Long Yang didn't want to form an alliance with the human race, but he felt that Yun Kunyo shouldn't be the one to negotiate an alliance because she wasn't qualified. Even Xianyuan Baijian of the Xianyuan clan wasn't qualified. It was possible to form an alliance, but now wasn't the time because it would take some time before someone qualified to negotiate with Long Yang. Xiao Chen didn't know what Yun Kunyo and Long Yang were talking about, but he didn't care about it. There were only 2 things Xiao Chen wanted to do right now. One was to kill Baichuran, and the other was to ascend to the Saint ranking. Other than that, Xiao Chen didn't care about anything else. He focused on cultivation. Meanwhile, the day of the heavenly Yin Valley's opening was getting closer and closer. Many disciples of the heavenly Yin Taiyang sect were rubbing their hands in anticipation of the opening of the heavenly Yin Valley. To everyone's surprise, Yin Yangzi had indeed taken great care of the sacred palace this time. Not only had Chen Ling, Long Qing, Chen Yu and the others obtained the qualifications to enter the heavenly Yin Valley, but even Qin Shuru, the 4 girls, the other sacred palace chosen, Ouyang Roshua, Gudu Wiao and the others obtained the qualifications to enter the heavenly Yin Valley. It could be said that Yin Yangzi had taken great care of the sacred palace. Everyone in the sacred palace was naturally overjoyed. Time passed day by day. One morning, before the sun had even risen, Xiao Chen and the others had already gathered together because today was the opening day of the heavenly Yin Valley. The sacred palace chosen were all present, as well as Gudu Wiao, Ouyang Roshua, and Huang Fueo. It had been a long time since Xiao Chen had seen Gudu Wiao and the others. In truth, as the gap between their cultivation levels grew wider, Xiao Chen's contact with them had become increasingly distant. However, some things couldn't be changed with time. At the very least, their feelings for each other were boundless. He nodded at the 3. Gudu Wuya and the others revealed a rare smile when they saw this. Without saying anything, the group left the cave and headed towards the entrance of the heavenly Valley. Shao Qin knew that Bai Qiuran was likely to make a move in the heavenly Valley. After all, Yun Kunyo had already warned him. He was certain of this. However, no matter what Bai Qiuran was up to, Shao Qin wasn't afraid. If he couldn't even defeat Bai Qiuran's lackeys, how could he kill Bai Qiuran? He calmly led the group to the entrance of the heavenly Valley. The heavenly Valley was one of the great cultivation mystic realms of the heavenly Taiyang sect. It was extremely famous throughout the Central World. The entrance to the heavenly Valley was located deep within the heavenly Taiyang sect. Other than the time when the heavenly Valley was open, the heavenly Valley strictly forbade anyone from getting close to it. Anyone who violated the rules would be killed on the spot regardless of their status. The heavenly Valley was usually under strict protection. Only when the heavenly Valley was open could many disciples approach it. However, each time the heavenly Valley opened, there was a strict limit on the number of people who could enter. It opened once every 10 years, and 10,000 people could enter each time. 10,000 people wasn't a lot. Compared to the millions of disciples in the heavenly Taiyang sect, it wasn't difficult to see how precious a spot to enter the heavenly Valley was. It was no wonder that so many disciples were willing to do anything to obtain a spot to enter the heavenly Valley. After all, no one wanted to miss such an opportunity. Shao Qin and the group all held a special token in their hands. This token was the proof of entry to the heavenly Valley. Only those who held the token could enter the heavenly Valley. They didn't encounter any checks along the way. However, along the way, Shao Qin also saw many disciples who were trying to take advantage of the situation to sneak through. These disciples didn't have a token. Hence, they were forcefully stopped by the talisman array as soon as they approached the heavenly Valley. The token could be said to be the key to pass through the talisman array protecting the heavenly Valley. Without the token, it was impossible to even get close to the heavenly Valley, let alone enter it. They arrived at the entrance of the heavenly Valley. It wasn't a big square, but it was more than enough to accommodate tens of thousands of people. This square wasn't grand. It could even be said that it was a little decayed. The bluestone on the ground was cracked and weeds were cut out. It looked like a place that had been abandoned for a long time. However, this seemingly dilapidated square was where the entrance to the heavenly Valley was located. Just as Shao Qin and the group arrived at the square, thousands of disciples had already gathered. Thousands of disciples had already gathered here. These disciples were divided into many different camps and were chatting with each other. The heavenly Taiyang sect was divided into many factions. This could be seen from the scene before them. The disciples of different factions gathered together and guarded against each other. Although they all belonged to the heavenly Taiyang sect in name, the competition between them was particularly fierce, especially when it came to a cultivation mystic realm like the heavenly Valley. It should be known that the heavenly Eagle Valley was different from ordinary cultivation mystic realms. It wasn't guaranteed that one would obtain benefits after entering the heavenly Valley. How much benefits one could obtain in the heavenly Valley depended on oneself. Therefore, every time the heavenly Valley opened, it meant that there would be fierce competition. The heavenly Taiyang sect was obviously willing to see such an effect. Only with competition would there be pressure. With pressure, many disciples would work hard to cultivate. Only in this way could a sect truly maintain its eternal prosperity. Therefore, even though the heavenly Taiyang sect's upper echelons knew that there were many factions in the sect, they didn't care at all. In other words, everything that the heavenly Taiyang sect had been built by them. It was also something that these experts wanted to see. They didn't greet the others either. After all, everyone belonged to different factions, and no one would be long-winded with them. Shao Qin and the group naturally belonged to the Sacred Palace faction. However, the The Sacred Palace faction was currently very weak in the Heavenly Yin Taiyang sect. After all, the Sacred Palace had just joined the Heavenly Yin Taiyang sect, and its foundation was still shallow. After finding an empty corner, Xiao Chen and the group chatted as they quietly waited for the Heavenly Yin Valley to open. While Xiao Chen and the others were chatting, a commotion suddenly broke out in the crowd. Immediately after, Xiao Chen saw a group of nearly 2,000 people land on the square one after another. Moreover, this group was extremely domineering. Not only did they occupy the best seats as soon as they arrived, they even chased away the surrounding disciples from the other factions. In the face of this group's domineering behavior, many disciples from the other factions had no choice but to swallow their anger. Xiao Chen also learned the identity of this group of disciples from them. These people were disciples from the Heavenly Yin Taiyang sect's main faction. Among the many factions in the Heavenly Yin Taiyang sect, the main faction was the strongest and had the largest number of disciples. Therefore, no matter the occasion, the main faction disciples were very domineering. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1274. As disciples of the main faction, not only were they the strongest and had the largest number of people, they also had a natural sense of superiority. They had always felt that they were the orthodox disciples of the Heavenly Yin Taiyang sect. Of course, this was indeed the case. However, it was also because of this that the disciples of the main faction looked down on the disciples of the other factions. Nearly 2,000 people were disciples of the main faction. When the Heavenly Yin Valley opened, nearly 2,000 disciples of the main faction could enter. On the other hand, the other factions only had a few hundred disciples at most. For example, the Sacred Palace faction only had a dozen people including Xiao Chen, and this was the result of Yinyangzi's special care. Bai Chuyue's figure was among the main faction disciples. She glanced indifferently at Xiao Chen in the distance, and revealed a cold smile as she spoke to a young man beside her. "Senior brother Zhu, that's Xiao Chen." The young man beside Bai Chuyue was the first chosen of the Heavenly Yin Taiyang sect, Zhu Muzhu. He was also known as the third strongest person among the younger generation of the Heavenly Yin Taiyang sect, and his strength was second only to Bai Churan and Yun Kunyo. Zhu Mujue's appearance didn't have any special features. He was very ordinary, the kind of existence that no one would spare a second glance at if thrown into a crowd. However, such an ordinary-looking person with no special features was revered by countless disciples of the Heavenly Yin Taiyang sect and firmly seated on the throne of the first chosen. Zhu Mujue glanced indifferently at Xiao Chen when he heard Bai Chuyue's words. There wasn't any joy or sadness on his face. "He's the person you want to kill?" Bai Chuyue had already told Zhu Mujue about killing Xiao Chen a few days ago. Just as Bai Chuyue had said, Zhu Mujue would never agree to such a thing given his character. Unfortunately, Zhu Mujue owed Bai Chuyue a favor, so he had no choice but to agree in the end. With Zhu Mujue's support, Bai Chuyue was full of confidence. She smiled faintly when she heard Zhu Mujue's words. "That's right, it's him. Senior brother Zhu, kill him and we'll write off what happened between us." "All right." From the looks of it, Zhu Mujue did not wish to speak much with Bai Chuyue. He simply nodded and turned his head away, ignoring Bai Chuyue. Facing Zhu Mujue's actions, Bai Chuyue did not say much. She smiled faintly and continued to wait quietly for the Heavenly Yin Valley to open. They didn't have to wait for long. After 10,000 disciples from the various factions had arrived, 2 half-step great saints from the Taiyang sect appeared in the sky. Yinyangzi did not appear, and the 2 of them were in charge of the opening of the Heavenly Yin Valley. The 2 of them stood proudly in the sky and looked down at the 10,000 disciples. Then, one of them said indifferently, "The opening of the Heavenly Yin Valley will last for half a year. After half a year, all of you will be forcefully sent out. As for how many benefits you can obtain from the valley, it will depend on your own luck. In addition, I would like to remind all of you that although the heavenly Een Valley is a cultivation mystic realm, it is still very dangerous. This is not only because of the environment of the heavenly Een Valley, but also because of your companions. These are all dangers. There will be deaths in the heavenly Een Valley, so all of you should be careful. The half-step great saint said slowly. Without waiting for a reply, he took out a token from his chest and threw it into the air. The token flew into the sky and hovered in the sky. At the same time, a huge light door appeared under the token. This light door was the entrance to the heavenly Een Valley. Gusts of cold wind blew out from it. As the entrance opened, the half-step great saint said, "The entrance is open. All of you can enter now." Since the entrance was already open, the disciples rushed into the heavenly Een Valley as soon as the half-step great saint finished speaking. Among them, when Bai Churan entered the heavenly Een Valley, she turned her head and glanced at Shao Chen. The smile on her face widened as if she wanted to tell Shao Chen that he would definitely die in this trip to the heavenly Een Valley. Not noticing Bai Chuyue's gaze, Shao Chen and the others followed the crowd and entered the heavenly Een Valley through the light door. After everyone had entered the heavenly Een Valley, the light door disappeared and the entrance closed. The token also returned to the half-step great saint stage expert's hand. Once one entered the heavenly Een Valley, they couldn't leave halfway. They could only wait for half a year before they were forcefully sent out. After entering the heavenly Een Valley like the others, Shao Chen and the others passed through the entrance. As soon as Shao Chen and the others entered the heavenly Een Valley, he saw the fear on the faces of the surrounding disciples. Bai Chuyue and the other main branch disciples blocked Shao Chen's path. It was obvious that Bai Chuyue and the others were waiting for Shao Chen here. Seeing Shao Chen and the others appear, Bai Chuyue sneered. "Shao Chen, you really shouldn't have come to the heavenly Een Valley. If you didn't come, you might have been able to live for a while longer. But that's no longer possible now." Now that they had entered the heavenly Een Valley, Bai Chuyue naturally didn't need to hide her killing intent. There were no Taiyang sect experts here, and even if Yin Yangzi wanted to protect Shao Chen, he was too far away to do anything in the heavenly Een Valley. Shao Chen's expression didn't change much in the face of Bai Chuyue and the other main branch disciples. Hadn't he already expected this? However, the disciples of the other main branches were whispering among themselves. "They're from the sacred palace, right? Why would someone from the main bloodline be interested in him? It looks like the main branch is going to kill them. You don't even know? Let me tell you, it's all because of senior brother Bai Churan. There were some who didn't know what had happened between the sacred palace and the main faction, but there were soon people who began to explain that everything was because of Bai Churan. After listening to these people's explanations, the disciples understood the whole story. They looked at Shao Chen and the others with sympathy in their eyes. It seemed that the sacred palace disciples were really going to die in the heavenly Een Valley. After offending senior brother Bai Churan, the sacred palace disciples were no match for him. But compared to the sympathy of the other disciples, Shao Chen appeared very calm. Shao Chen didn't panic at all when Bai Chuyue and the others blocked his path. His expression remained calm as he looked at Bai Chuyue. "You can't wait to make a move already? It looks like your relationship with Bai Churan isn't shallow." Bai Chuyue didn't know the relationship between Bai Chuyue and Bai Churan, but he didn't hide it. He sneered and replied, "My name is Bai Chuyue, and I'm Bai Churan's younger brother. My name is Shao Chen. Remember it well, or you won't even know who killed you when you die. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 1275. Bai Chuyue bluntly revealed his relationship with Bai Churan. Shao Chen smiled when he heard that Bai Chuyue was actually Bai Churan's disciple. "So that's how it is. No wonder you couldn't wait to jump out." Bai Chuyue was Bai Churan's younger brother. This explained why he was so eager to kill Xiao Chen. However, Bai Chuyue had clearly not thought of one thing. Even though he had led almost 2,000 disciples from the main branch to surround and kill Xiao Chen, would they listen to him? After all, even though the main branch was powerful, Bai Churan wasn't the only one in charge. It could even be said that Bai Churan's status was merely ranked second in the main branch because Yun Kunyo was above him. There wasn't a trace of worry on his face. At the same time, Zhu Mujue took a step forward and spoke indifferently to Xiao Chen. There's no enmity between us, but I must kill you today. You can only blame yourself for offending someone you shouldn't have offended. Zhu Mujue wasn't good with words, so he didn't beat around the bush and spoke bluntly. When he heard Zhu Mujue, Xiao Chen acutely sensed that Zhu Mujue's strength was extremely formidable. Especially his cultivation, it seemed to have attained perfection in the Tao Emperor realm, just like Bai Churan. Xiao Chen was a cultivation level lower than Xiao Chen. If he fought Zhu Mujue now, he wasn't confident in his ability to win. However, just as Xiao Chen had always thought, Bai Chuyue had overlooked one thing, and that was that he didn't have to do anything at all. As soon as Zhu Mujue finished speaking and everyone in the surroundings felt that the sacred palace's main branch was doomed, a young girl's cold shout resounded. Zhu Mujue, you can't kill him. At the same time, a young girl slowly walked out from among the many disciples of the main bloodline. Her voice rang out suddenly, and at the same time, a young girl walked out slowly. Bai Chuyue's expression changed slightly when he saw the young girl walk out from the crowd, and he spoke in a slightly cold voice. Lianyao, what's the meaning of this? This girl was none other than the second candidate of the heavenly Yin-Yang sect, Lianyao. At the same time, she was Yun Kunyo's true confidant. She held an important position in the main branch of the heavenly Yin-Yang sect. At this moment, Lian Yao stood out. Half of the nearly 2,000 main branch disciples stood behind Lian Yao. Clearly, they all supported Lian Yao. Or rather, they were all on Yun Kunyo's side. Yun Kunyo and Bai Churan were not on the same side. Speaking of which, it was because Yun Kunyo looked down on Bai Churan and did not want to be on the same side as her. Bai Churan naturally could not be nice to a cold but. Therefore, other than the neutral faction like Zhu Mujue, the rest of the main faction were divided into two factions. One was Yun Kunyo and the other was Bai Churan. At that moment, along with Lian Yao's appearance, the disciples of the main lineage quickly divided into two camps. Looking at this scene, Xiao Chen revealed a faint smile. He had never been worried before. Even though the sacred palace's strength was naturally no match for so many disciples from the main branch, and even if Xiao Chen and the others were incredibly talented, they had absolutely no chance of winning. However, one should not forget that when Yun Kunyo visited Longyang and Fengju, she had said that they could look for Lian Yao if they needed help in the heavenly Yin Valley. In that case, it was obvious that Yun Kunyo intended to help Xiao Chen. Or perhaps, she did not want to see Xiao Chen die so quickly in the heavenly Yin Valley. Perhaps Yun Kunyo wanted to save Xiao Chen's life and see if Xiao Chen could replace Bai Churan's position. Of course, Xiao Chen did not care what Yun Kunyo was thinking. In any case, Yun Kunyo had the intention to help him, and that was enough. In the face of Bai Chuyue's questioning, Lian Yao glanced at the expressionless Xiao Chen before shifting her gaze to Bai Chuyue. Nothing much. Senior Sister Yun knows about the grudge between Bai Churan and Xiao Chen, but Senior Sister Yun does not wish to see Xiao Chen die in the heavenly Yin Valley. Hence, I am following orders. Does that mean that you are going to stop me? Bai Chuyue did not know what Bai Chuyue meant. Her face darkened as she spoke coldly. Originally, Bai Chuyue had absolute confidence in killing Xiao Chen. Hence, Bai Chuyue could not wait to act as soon as the group entered the heavenly Yin Valley. In Bai Chuyue's opinion, with the main lineage's powerful strength and Zhu Mujue's agreement, killing Xiao Chen's group would be a piece of cake. However, Bai Chuyue had never expected that Yun Kunyo would actually interfere. With Yun Kunyo's interference, Bai Chuyue's thoughts were completely shattered. After all, Bai Churan did not have the final say in the main lineage. It could even be said that Bai Churan's power was nothing in front of Yun Kunyo. As Yun Kunyo's confidant and most trusted person, Lien Yao did not give her any face. What do you want? Xiao Qin, I am going to stop you. This is Senior Sister Yun's order. Bai Chuyue's face turned cold when she heard that. She was confident that she could kill Xiao Qin, but who would have thought that Xiao Qin would come out of the blue and mess with her? Bai Chuyue was unwilling to give up just like that. She gritted her teeth and finally said coldly, "Kill?" He didn't want to give up just like that. After all, among the disciples of the main branch who had entered the heavenly Yin Valley, Bai Churan's faction was still stronger in terms of strength. Moreover, they also had Zhu Mujue's help. As such, there was still a chance for them to kill Xiao Qin while Lien Yao was obstructing them. Lien Yao's face turned cold when she heard Bai Chuyue's words. She said coldly, "Bai Chuyue, you are courting death." After saying that, the 2,000 main lineage disciples quickly engaged in a chaotic battle. Before they could kill Xiao Qin, the main lineage was already divided. Zhu Mujue originally did not want to take action, but he had no choice. In the end, he could only take action, but he was stopped by Lien Yao. Lien Yao's strength was not as strong as Zhu Mujue, but Zhu Mujue would not be able to defeat Lien Yao in a short time. Both of them were engaged in a fierce battle. Lien Yao shouted at Xiao Qin's group without turning her head. "Why aren't you leaving? What are you waiting for?" Lien Yao did not want to fight to the death with Bai Chuyue. She only took action to delay Bai Chuyue's group and buy some time for Xiao Qin's group to leave. Upon hearing Lien Yao's words, Xiao Qin cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, Senior Sister Lien Yao." After saying that, Xiao Qin led his group and left. Bai Chuyue could do nothing but watch as Xiao Qin's group left. "Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me." Chapter 1276. From the beginning to the end, Xiao Qin didn't show the slightest hint of panic. After hearing Lien Yao's words, Xiao Qin cupped his hands together and thanked her without any hesitation. Then, he led the Sacred Palace group away. Their footsteps were leisurely and Xiao Qin and the others didn't look like they were fleeing at all. On the contrary, it looked like they were taking a stroll in a garden. Bai Chuyue's face darkened as she watched Xiao Qin leisurely lead the group away. "Xiao Qin, you coward. Don't leave if you have the guts." Seeing Xiao Qin leave without being able to do anything about it made Bai Chuyue extremely furious, which was why she yelled in anger. However, Xiao Qin completely ignored Bai Chuyue's angry shout. "Don't leave if you have the guts? What a joke. Do you think this is a street brawl? Since someone had helped him stop Bai Chuyue and the others, why would Xiao Qin foolishly stay here? Moreover, he clearly knew that the Sacred Palace faction wasn't strong enough to fight Bai Churan. What else could he be but a fool if he continued to fight? Xiao Qin glanced at Bai Chuyue in disdain, then ignored her and led the group away. Now wasn't the time to fight to the death with Bai Churan's faction. Once he made a breakthrough in his cultivation, Xiao Qin would settle everything himself. Moreover, with Xiao Qin gone, he didn't have to worry about Lien Yao's safety at all. Bai Chuyue's target was him to begin with. Now that he was gone, Bai Chuyue naturally had no reason to attack. Therefore, Lien Yao would be fine. As such, Xiao Qin could leave without any psychological burden. He could also guess why Yun Kunyo helped him. It might have something to do with Long Yang and Feng Ju. However, this wasn't something Xiao Qin needed to consider. Moreover, he had already told Long Yang and Feng Ju that he was going to enter the heavenly Yin Valley, but they refused to leave and continued to stay at their residence, saying that they wanted to wait for Xiao Qin to come out. There was nothing Xiao Qin could do about it. Putting aside Long Yang, Xiao Qin and the others left under Bai Chuyue's murderous gaze. Lien Yao waited until Shao Chen and the others disappeared before she took the initiative to pull some distance away from Zhu Mujue and looked at Bai Chuyue expressionlessly. Do you still want to fight? Lien Yao's meaning was very clear. Now that the people from the sacred palace had left, there was no point in continuing the fight. Upon hearing Lien Yao's words and recalling Shao Chen's disdainful gaze before he left, Bai Chuyue's face twisted in anger. She glared fiercely at Lien Yao. After a long while, the murderous aura in Bai Chuyue's eyes slowly dissipated. She then exhaled and said, "All right, Lien Yao, let's go." Bai Chuyue was Bai Churan after all. Even though she was extremely angry at Lien Yao's interference, she ultimately swallowed her anger. Just as Shao Chen thought, now that the people from the sacred palace had left, there was no point in continuing to fight to the death with Lien Yao. After all, Bai Chuyue's real target was only Shao Chen, and she wasn't very interested in Lien Yao. Moreover, Bai Chuyue didn't really dare to do anything to Lien Yao. One must know that one had to look at the owner before beating a dog. If Bai Chuyue really killed Lien Yao here, how would she explain it to Yun Kunyo? One must know that even Bai Churan had to retreat when facing Yun Kunyo. If it wasn't necessary, Bai Chuyue didn't want to fall out with Yun Kunyo too much. After missing the opportunity to kill Shao Chen, one could imagine how depressed Bai Chuyue was. However, there was nothing she could do. Moreover, everyone had to stay in the heavenly Yin Valley for half a year. Missing this opportunity didn't mean that there wouldn't be a chance to kill Shao Chen. However, she still had to be careful of Lien Yao and couldn't let her interfere again. Along the way, a disciple came to Bai Chuyue's side and said softly, "Senior brother Bai, are we going to let Shao Chen and the others off just like that?" "Of course not. However, we still need to make some more plans." Who would have thought that Yun Kunyo would interfere and protect Shao Chen? Bai Chuyue said calmly. Bai Chuyue didn't expect Yun Kunyo to interfere. Bai Chuyue paused for a moment before speaking again. "Send someone to keep an eye on Lien Yao. You don't have to do anything. Just find out where she is. The next time we make a move, we can't let Lien Yao ruin it." Since Bai Chuyue knew that Yun Kunyo had interfered, she naturally couldn't let her guard down. She immediately ordered someone to secretly follow Lien Yao and report Lien Yao's whereabouts to her at any time. Hearing Bai Chuyue's words, the disciple respectfully replied. Following which, a dozen silhouettes quietly left from Bai Chuyue's group. These people were all experts in tracking. Although their battle prowess wasn't very high, their ability to conceal their auras was top-notch. It shouldn't be a problem for them to follow Bai Chuyue. While Bai Churan's group was making last-minute arrangements, on the other side, Shao Chen and the others had already left and were heading deeper into the heavenly Yin Valley from the entrance. As they went deeper, Shao Chen realized that there were gusts of cold wind blowing in the heavenly Yin Valley. However, unlike the Yin wind on Sunless Mountain, the Yin wind in the heavenly Yin Valley was still cold, but it had an extremely heaven-defying effect on cultivators. It could condense spirit energy. That's right, the Yin wind in the heavenly Yin Valley could help cultivators condense the spirit energy in their bodies and make their spirit energy even more condensed. It was common knowledge that the more condensed one's spirit energy was, the more stable one's foundation would be. At the same time, when one's spirit energy erupted, its might would be even greater. It was precisely because of the chilly winds in the chilly wind valley that the heavenly Yin Valley could become a secret place for cultivation. Of course, the benefits of the heavenly Yin Valley were far more than that. It was just that Shao Chen and the others had not encountered it yet. Shao Chen was in a good mood as he felt the benefits of the Yin wind. With such Yin wind, even if he didn't encounter any other fortuitous encounters, Shao Chen was confident that he could break through to the perfection of the Tao Emperor realm within half a year with such Yin wind. He didn't have to take the initiative to do anything at all. Under the blowing of the Yin wind, the spirit energy in his body was being condensed passively, which saved him a lot of trouble. After traveling for over 2 hours, a fist-sized stone lay quietly on the ground in front of Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen's face lit up with joy when he saw the stone. Wind stone. He was overjoyed. He didn't expect to find a wind stone so quickly. Moreover, it was the size of a fist. It wasn't just Xiao Chen. Qin Shuru, Chen Ling, Long Qing, Chen Yu, Guduya, and the others were also delighted. Their gazes were locked onto the ordinary-looking black stone in front of them. Please add it to your collection. Please recommend it. Chapter 1277. Xiao Chen and the others stared at the ordinary-looking stone in front of them. This wind stone could be said to be the most precious item in the entire heavenly Valley. It was also the item that all the disciples who entered the heavenly Valley wanted the most. Everyone knew that the entire heavenly Valley was surrounded by wind all year round. The wind was very beneficial to cultivators, but over the years, the wind would slowly condense and eventually turn into a wind stone. It took a long time for the wind stone to form. In the entire central world, only the heavenly Sun Sect's heavenly Valley could produce wind stones. This was why the heavenly Valley was so famous in the central world. For cultivators, the heavenly Valley was very helpful. Just the wind stone's tempering effect on cultivators' spiritual energy was at least 10 times better than the wind stone in the heavenly Valley. Moreover, this was only one of the uses of the wind stone. Using the wind stone to cultivate, not only could it temper one's spiritual energy, but it could also help cultivators break through. Its effect was much better than spirit stones and pills. He didn't expect to find a wind stone so quickly. After his joy, Xiao Chen walked up to the wind stone without hesitation and reached out to grab it. Just as Xiao Chen grabbed the wind stone, the sound of wind breaking could be heard from afar. At the same time, an angry roar was heard by Xiao Chen and the others. Put down that wind stone. In the heavenly Valley, the wind stone was definitely a treasure that everyone wanted to fight for. Therefore, in the past when the heavenly Valley opened, it could be said that many disciples fought with each other for the wind stone. It was not uncommon for disciples to kill each other for the wind stone. Xiao Chen turned around in the face of this sudden angry shout. He saw 40 to 50 disciples wearing the uniforms of the Taiyang sect of Tian flying toward him at a high speed. In just a moment, this group of disciples arrived in front of Xiao Chen and the others. They all looked at the wind stone in Xiao Chen's hand with a burning gaze. It was about the size of a fist. Facing the fervent gazes of this group of people, Xiao Chen's face was calm and indifferent. He minded his own business and put the wind stone into his storage ring. As the wind stone disappeared, this group of people finally recovered. Another person also fixed his gaze on Xiao Chen as a cold smile appeared on his face. So you're from the Sacred Palace. Put down the wind stone and you may leave. The Sacred Palace faction had only just joined the heavenly Yang sect. Among the many factions in the heavenly Yang sect, the Sacred Palace couldn't be considered famous or powerful. However, due to Bai Chuyue and the rest's obstruction at the entrance earlier, the Sacred Palace faction had become known to everyone. Hence, the disciple immediately recognized Xiao Chen and the rest. Hence, he did not hesitate to snatch the wind stone. The Sacred Palace faction had only just joined the heavenly Yang sect, and was not a native faction of the central world. Hence, this disciple did not think much of the Sacred Palace faction. Xiao Chen smiled faintly when he heard the disciple's words. What if I don't hand it over? Since this piece of wind stone was already in his pocket, it was simply wishful thinking for him to hand it over. Facing Xiao Chen's indifferent expression, the disciple's face darkened as he spoke. You won't hand it over? Looks like your Sacred Palace faction doesn't know that it's allowed to kill in the heavenly Valley. If you don't hand it over, all of you can stay in the heavenly Valley forever. The young man made a solemn vow. He did not think much of Xiao Qin and the others at all. Firstly, there were more than twice as many of them as Xiao Qin's group. Moreover, the Sacred Palace faction had only just joined the Heavenly Yin-Yang sect and was weak. Hence, the young man was naturally even more fearless. The young man's name was Li Wuyun. He was a disciple of the Li clan. The 40 to 50 people beside him were also members of the Li clan. The Li clan was a large clan and could be considered an overlord in the human race's territory in the Central World. The Li clan had a quasi-saint great sovereign overseeing it and could be considered a quasi-saint clan. Of course, the Li clan was also a subsidiary faction of the Heavenly Yin-Yang sect. Compared to the Sacred Palace, the Li clan's overall strength was much stronger. Among them, the most important was at the quasi-saint great sovereign level. After all, Xiao Xing and the rest were only at the initial quasi-saint stage, while the quasi-saint great sovereigns of the Li clan had all reached the perfection or even the perfection stage of the quasi-saint stage. The Li clan was stronger than the Sacred Palace in terms of quasi-saint great sovereigns, but in terms of the younger generation, the Li clan's heaven prides might not necessarily be stronger than Xiao Qin and the other Sacred Palace chosens. Don't forget that even Yin Yangzi was shocked when the Sacred Palace's talent test was conducted. Putting aside Xiao Qin, Qin Ling, Long Qing, Qin Yu and the others were also peerless heaven prides. Their talent was on par with the chosens on the saint rankings. Li Wuyun did not know how terrifying the younger generation of the Sacred Palace was. Or rather, from the beginning, he did not take the Sacred Palace seriously at all. He only thought that the Sacred Palace was just a bunch of barbarians from the North Star boundary. How strong could their disciples be? Li Wuyun's eyes flashed coldly, and the corners of his mouth curled into a sneer. He looked indifferently at Xiao Qin as if to say, "Kid, hand over the Yin Wind Stone if you know what's good for you." Hearing Li Wuyun's words, Xiao Qin sneered in his heart. He was lucky enough to find a piece of chilly wind stone, but he was targeted in the next second. It seemed that what everyone said was true. This chilly wind valley was not only a secret realm for cultivation, but also a battlefield for fierce battles. Every time the chilly wind valley opened, tens of thousands of disciples would enter. There were many cases of people fighting over the limited amount of Yin wind stones, and the higher-ups of the Heavenly Yin Taiyang sect did not care at all. In their opinion, such competition was beneficial to the development of the sect. Moreover, since you were weak, you naturally did not have the qualifications to enjoy these treasures. It was better to give them to the stronger disciples. This was more beneficial to the development of the Heavenly Yin Taiyang sect. He knew what the higher-ups of the Heavenly Yin Taiyang sect meant. Those who were strong could obtain the treasures, while those who were not could only stand by and watch. The strong preyed on the weak. This was the law of survival in the Central World, and it was also the law of survival in the Heavenly Yin Taiyang sect. The smile on his face grew even brighter. Since that was the case, there was nothing more to say. Xiao Qin had no intention of handing over the Yin Wind Stone. It's not impossible for you to have the Yin Wind Stone. Make your move. If you can defeat us, the Yin Wind Stone will naturally be yours. Begging to be collected, begging to be recommended. Chapter 1278. In the Heavenly Yin Valley, it was very common for people to fight over Yin Wind Stones, so Xiao Qin didn't have any superfluous words to say to Li Wuyun and the other disciples of the Li family. Since they wanted the Yin Wind Stones, they could only fight. Li Wuyun was taken aback when he heard Xiao Qin's words. He clearly didn't expect Xiao Qin's attitude to be so unyielding. One must know that the Sacred Palace wasn't a native force of the Central World and had just joined the Heavenly Yin Solar sect to form a new faction. The Sacred Palace could be said to be the weakest among the many factions in the Heavenly Yin Solar sect. Li Wuyun didn't expect such a new faction to have such a tough attitude. When the Li family faction had first joined the Yin and Yang sects, they had swallowed their pride for a long time. Faced with the bullying of the other factions, the Li family faction had always chosen to endure. Because of this, the Li family faction gradually gained a foothold in the heavenly Yin solar sect and slowly occupied a place. A new faction without a foundation naturally needed to endure. Therefore, Li Wuyun didn't expect Xiao Chen's tough attitude. After a moment of silence, Li Wuyun said coldly, "It seems that your sacred palace is really courting death. Fine, let me teach you the rules of the heavenly Yin solar sect." Li Wuyun felt that Xiao Chen and the Sacred Palace faction were too arrogant and didn't understand the word endure at all. However, how could he know that Xiao Chen and the others weren't the type to swallow their anger? Among the 10 chosens and chosens of the Sacred Palace, which one of them could swallow their anger? Every one of them could be said to be extremely arrogant. Therefore, even after coming to the Central World and the Heavenly Yin Solar Sect, the Sacred Palace faction still didn't have the habit of swallowing their anger. Xiao Chen's expression didn't change when he heard Li Wuyun's words. "If you want a fight, then come. What's the point of talking so much nonsense? If you beat us, the Yin Wind Stones will naturally be yours. You're courting death." Seeing that Xiao Chen still did not know how to restrain himself, Li Wuyun snorted coldly and took the initiative to attack Xiao Chen. Following Li Wuyun's attack, many disciples from the Li clan also attacked. In response, Xiao Chen and the others naturally would not sit still and wait for their death. The two factions immediately engaged in a chaotic battle. Xiao Chen was naturally going against Li Wuyun. As the strongest amongst the younger generation of the Li clan, Li Wuyun was a quasi-saint of the Yin and Yang sect. His cultivation had attained perfection in the Tao Emperor realm, and he was at the same level as Xiao Chen. At the same cultivation level, as the leader of the younger generation of the Li family, Li Wuyun's combat strength was indeed inferior. However, he had clearly underestimated Xiao Chen. To be honest, Xiao Chen had never been afraid of anyone at the same cultivation level. Li Wuyun was ranked 18th amongst the quasi-saints of the Yin and Yang sect, and he could be considered to be ranked near the top. His strength was naturally not weak. Just like Xiao Chen, Li Wuyun was a sword cultivator. As he swung his sword intent at perfection surged out, and the sharp edge of his sword slashed towards Xiao Chen like a bolt of lightning. Xiao Chen didn't act carelessly when facing Li Wuyun's attack. The dustless sword was already in his hand, and he had no intention of dodging at all. Xiao Chen swung his sword to meet Li Wuyun's attack, and he instantly executed the Saint Tier 9 sifting sword. Xiao Chen had been cultivating the Jiuluo sword qi for many years, and his mastery of it had long reached the level of perfection. As his sword slashed out, the laws of strength and laws of speed completely erupted at the same time. Since he comprehended the energy of the laws, Xiao Chen's comprehension of the laws of strength and laws of speed had deepened. The laws of strength? The laws of speed? Li Wuyun's expression darkened when he sensed the two laws of strength gushing out from Xiao Chen's body. However, he wasn't too surprised. The laws of strength should have been mastered by at least a half-step saint, but in the Central World, many outstanding geniuses could comprehend the laws of strength in advance. Unlike in the North Star boundary, where there were very few people who could comprehend the laws of strength in advance, there were many geniuses in the Central World who could comprehend the laws of strength in advance. In the various great saint sects, as long as one could become a quasi-saint, he or she would have already comprehended the laws of strength in advance. Therefore, it wasn't too difficult for the young geniuses in the Central World to comprehend the laws of strength in advance. As soon as he finished speaking, the law of fire also gushed out from Li Wuyun's body. What Li Wuyun comprehended was the law of fire. Once he unleashed it, his spiritual energy would have the effect of flames. Not only would it increase his attack power, but it could also burn his enemies. It could be considered a very powerful law of fire. As soon as the law of fire erupted, scorching flames began to burn around Li Wuyun's body, making him look like a man of fire. Bathed in the raging flames, Li Wuyun's aura continued to soar, and the long sword in his hand was also wrapped in flames. Shao Chen, your sacred palace branch, didn't know how to be patient when you first entered the heavenly Yin solar sect. Not only did you offend the main branch, but you even offended senior brother Bai Churan. It seems that your sacred palace really doesn't know what's good for you. Today, I'll teach senior brother Bai Churan the rules of the heavenly Yin solar sect. As soon as he finished speaking, the two swords had already collided. The two swords collided and immediately cancelled each other out. No one had the upper hand in the first collision, but Li Wuyun didn't give Shao Chen too much time to react. After the first attack cancelled each other out, Li Wuyun took a step forward and immediately rushed towards Shao Chen. With the existence of the law of fire, Li Wuyun seemed to leave a sea of fire wherever he passed. Because of the obstruction of such flames, the place where Shao Chen and Li Wuyun were fighting formed a vacuum, making it difficult for others to get close at all. Shao Chen was completely surrounded by flames. The air became extremely hot at this moment. The raging fire that seemed to burn the sky seemed to be about to burn Shao Chen alive. There was nowhere to hide. At the same time, Li Wuyun had already arrived in front of Shao Chen and fiercely flicked the longsword in his hand. Seeing this, Shao Chen didn't hesitate and immediately used his sword to block. Li Wuyun's longsword had reached the saint level. At this time, with the addition of the law of fire, it was considered the best among the saint-level magic weapons. Seeing that Shao Chen wanted to meet him head-on, Li Wuyun shouted coldly, "You're really courting death." Li Wuyun wanted to break Shao Chen's dustless sword with one strike, but he was indeed overthinking it. The saint-level sword in his hand was indeed very strong with the addition of the law of fire, but Shao Chen's dustless sword was even more extraordinary. The dustless sword had no grade because it was transformed from Shao Chen's sword embryo of the heavenly way. It could be said that it was Shao Chen's divine sword. Therefore, Li Wuyun was daydreaming if he wanted to break the dustless sword with one strike. Begging for a monthly vote, begging for a recommendation. Chapter 1279. Shao Chen's sword collided fiercely, but the scene that Li Wuyun expected did not happen. The dustless sword was not afraid of the sword in his hand at all. After the head-on collision, the dustless sword showed no signs of shattering at all. With the addition of the laws of fire, the sword in Li Wuyun's hand could indeed be said to be extremely sharp. However, compared to the dustless sword, no matter how powerful the sword in Li Wuyun's hand was, it was only an ordinary holy weapon. Even though it had reached the peak level, it was clearly inferior to the dustless sword formed from the heavenly way sword embryo. The dustless sword did not fall into the slightest disadvantage. Li Wuyun was also slightly taken aback by this. Up until now, he had indeed gone all out and no longer held back in the slightest. But even so, Shao Chen still did not fall into a disadvantage, which made Li Wuyun slightly stunned. In Li Wuyun's opinion, Shao Chen and the other disciples of the sacred palace should not be too strong. After all, they were not native forces of the central world, but from the North Star boundary. In Li Wuyun's opinion, a place like the North Star boundary was a barbarian land. How could it be compared to a heaven's pride like him, who was born and raised in the central world? It should be known that the martial Tao of the central world was definitely much more advanced than that of the North Star boundary. In such a cultivation environment, even if two people were equally talented, there would definitely be a huge gap in strength in the end. Li Wuyun originally thought that he could easily defeat Shao Chen, but he did not expect Shao Chen to be so strong. It was simply shocking. However, what really shocked Li Wuyun was yet to come. After the two had exchanged dozens of moves, Shao Chen suddenly spoke in a very indifferent tone. "If that's all you've got, then this battle should be over." As soon as Shao Chen said this, The anger in Li Wuyun's heart suddenly rose. What did he mean? Did he think that he was too weak? You're courting death. Xiao Chen actually thought that he was too weak, which made Li Wuyun furious. With a roar, he suddenly slashed down with his sword, and the law of fire completely erupted. He was originally surprised by Xiao Chen's battle strength, but he did not expect that Xiao Chen actually thought that he was too weak. How could Li Wuyun accept this? For a moment, he launched a frenzied attack. However, in the face of Li Wuyun's frenzy, Xiao Chen was not afraid at all. In the face of the terrifying law of fire, Xiao Chen did not even bother to dodge. His tempered battle body fully erupted, golden light all over his body, and let Li Wuyun's law of fire burn his body. There was no need to doubt the offensive power of the law of fire. Since it was hailed as a type of law power with extremely powerful offensive power, then the offensive power of the law of fire must be incomparably powerful. If it were other people of the same cultivation level as Li Wuyun, they definitely wouldn't dare to take on the law of fire's attack head-on like Xiao Chen. However, Xiao Chen was different. With his tempered battle body, he had no problem taking on Li Wuyun's law of fire head-on. Upon seeing Xiao Chen actually taking on his law of fire head-on, Li Wuyun was obviously taken aback. He didn't expect Xiao Chen's physical body to be so strong that the law of fire couldn't hurt him at all. You! Li Wuyun was horrified and wanted to say something. But before he could speak, Xiao Chen interrupted. This battle can end now. With that, Xiao Chen raised his sword and swept it across. The law of strength and law of speed were fully unleashed. Seeing this, Li Wuyun didn't dare to be careless anymore. At this point in the battle, he knew that he had underestimated Xiao Chen. This guy's strength was definitely not weaker than his, and might even be much stronger. He didn't dare to be careless in dealing with Xiao Chen's attack anymore. However, Li Wuyun was still too naive. Xiao Chen's sword wasn't a martial technique, but an ability of the Heaven's Path sword embryo, spiritual slash. The silent blade easily penetrated Li Wuyun's defense. By the time Li Wuyun reacted, it was already too late. Spiritual attack? In the beginning, he was puzzled as to why Xiao Chen's sword only contained so little power. But soon, Li Wuyun realized that this sword wasn't an ordinary attack at all, but a spiritual attack instead. The tip of the sword silently pierced into Li Wuyun's body. Li Wuyun's heart froze, but before he could finish his words, an intense pain rose from the depths of his soul. Xiao Chen's sword had struck Li Wuyun's soul hard. The pain one had to endure when one's soul was injured was far greater than that of the physical body. That was why even Li Wuyun couldn't help but let out a blood-curdling scream. His soul trembled. Under such excruciating pain, Li Wuyun couldn't hold on any longer and fell straight from the sky. After successfully defeating Li Wuyun, Xiao Chen did not attack again as he watched Li Wuyun fall to the ground. It made no difference to Xiao Chen whether he killed Li Wuyun or not. Moreover, Li Wuyun's soul was injured this time. Even if he was treated with treasures of heaven and earth, it would take a long time for him to recover. He didn't kill Li Wuyun. After Xiao Chen defeated Li Wuyun, Chen Ling, Long Qing, Chen Yu, and the others also revealed their identities one after another. They also fought fiercely with the Li family disciples, but their strength wasn't as strong as Li Wuyun's. On the other hand, they had the advantage in numbers. Chen Ling, Long Qing, and Chen Yu were fighting 1 against 3. Each of them faced at least 2 Li family disciples. But even so, the Sacred Palace group gradually gained the upper hand. At this moment, the outcome of the battle was clear. One by one, the disciples of the Li family were defeated. In less than a quarter of an hour, the dozens of disciples of the Li family who were originally aggressive were all defeated by Xiao Chen and the others. Among them, the one who was most seriously injured was naturally Li Wuyun. It could be said that he took Xiao Chen's spiritual slash head-on without any defense. Although he didn't seem to be injured on the surface, his soul was severely injured and he had already fallen unconscious. The outcome had been decided. Under the horrified gazes of the Li family disciples, Shao Chen led the group away. The Sacred Palace group didn't kill in this battle and only defeated the Li family disciples. But even so, it was still enough to make the Li family disciples tremble in fear. They watched in horror as Shao Chen and the others left. Then, two of the disciples who weren't too seriously injured hurriedly came to Li Wuyun. Li Wuyun didn't seem to have any injuries on the surface, but his aura was extremely weak. It was obvious that he was seriously injured. The two disciples immediately shouted in horror, "Quick, save them! Save them!" Anyone could tell that Li Wuyun was in a very bad situation. While calling for help, the two disciples of the Li family were also shocked by Shao Chen's ruthlessness. It was as if he was about to kill Li Wuyun right there and then. "Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me." Chapter 1280. Li Wuyun had an extremely high status in the Li family, not only because he was the most talented person in the younger generation of the Li family, but also because he was the only son of the current patriarch of the Li family and the favorite of the several patriarchs of the Li family. It was hard to imagine what the consequences would be if something happened to Li Wuyun in the heavenly Yin Valley and the elders of the Li family found out. As the two disciples cried for help, the other Li family disciples also gathered around Li Wuyun, ignoring their injuries. One of the Li family disciples, who was also a candidate of the heavenly Yin Sun sect like Li Wuyun, frowned as he looked at the unconscious Li Wuyun. After a long while, he gritted his teeth and said, "Damn it, this is a soul attack. The Sacred Palace and Shao Chen are really ruthless." There were no external injuries, but his soul was severely injured. This was something only a soul attack could do. It was extremely difficult to heal a soul injury, and treasures and pills that could heal the soul were rare even in the Central World. The disciple had no other choice but to take out a few healing pills and feed them to Li Wuyun. These pills were all at the saint grade, but they were not mainly used to heal the soul. They could only be used to save one's life. If they really wanted to heal Li Wuyun's injuries, they would probably have to wait half a year until they left the heavenly Yin Valley. Right when the disciples of the Li clan were extremely worried about Li Wuyun's injuries, another group of people rushed over from afar. The Li family disciples' hearts tightened when they saw this group of people. Most of them were injured, and if they encountered a battle, they would not be able to fight back at all. Fortunately, this group of people didn't make a move. When they arrived in front of the Li family disciples, this group of about 70 to 80 people listened for a moment and asked in confusion, "Li Yu, what's wrong?" This group of people were disciples of the Sky Mist sect. When they heard the words of the leader, the prospective holy son of the Li family, who had fed Li Wuyun the medicinal pill earlier, Li Yu, took a step forward and said, "Senior Brother Wang, Sai, we encountered people from the Sacred Palace. The relationship between the Sky Mist sect's faction and the Li clan's faction could be considered friendly. This was mainly due to the fact that both factions had some relationship with each other. Therefore, when he saw that the person who came was a disciple from the Sky Mist sect's faction, Li Yu also secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Moreover, he gave a simple explanation of what happened to the Sky Mist sect's disciple. Upon hearing Li Yu's words, Senior Wang frowned and walked over to Li Wuyun. After carefully examining him, Senior Wang said with a solemn expression, "Soul attack? And it's an extremely powerful soul attack. It's at least at the Saint grade martial skill level." Brother Li's situation. Senior Brother Wang's eyesight was obviously much more experienced than Li Yu's, so he quickly saw through Li Wuyun's current situation. Hearing this, Li Yu nodded with an ugly expression. His heart was filled with bitterness, but there was nothing he could do. He could only grit his teeth and swallow it. This time, the Li family could be said to have tried to steal a chicken only to end up with rice. They originally planned to snatch the Yin Wind Stone from Shao Chen, but in the end, Not only did they not succeed, but they were also easily defeated by the sacred palace. In particular, it was still unknown whether Li Wuyun could recover fully. Moreover, with Li Wuyun's serious injuries, the Li family's outcome in this trip to the heavenly Yin Valley could be said to be almost certain. It was unlikely that they would gain much. Dozens of Li family disciples had entered the heavenly Yin Valley, but they had suffered such serious injuries on the first day. In the following days, the Li family disciples could only find a place to quietly wait for the heavenly Yin Valley to end. Senior brother Wang understood the feelings of the Li family disciples, but there was nothing he could do. He did not have a way to heal Li Wuyun's injuries. In the end, senior brother Wang could only symbolically leave some pills for Li Yu, and after a few words of consolation, he left with the Heavenly Mist sect disciples. But before he left, Li Yu took the initiative to remind him. Senior brother Wang, I have something from the bottom of my heart that I hope senior brother Wang will keep in mind. Junior brother, feel free to speak. Senior brother Wang replied. Although there aren't many people from the sacred palace, senior brother Wang must not be careless and underestimate them if you encounter them. The people from the sacred palace are really abnormal. They're definitely not as simple as they seem on the surface. Li Yu sincerely reminded. After this battle, Li Yu could be said to have personally experienced the terror of the sacred palace. Although they were few in number, each one of them was fiercer than the last. Putting aside Shao Qin, Qin Ling, Long Qing, Qin Yu and Tian, you were all terrifyingly strong. Therefore, anyone who underestimated the sacred palace would definitely suffer a great loss. Upon hearing Li Yu's words, senior brother Wang was not a brainless person. He let out a soft sigh and nodded slightly. Senior brother will keep junior brother's words in mind. If I encounter the sacred palace faction, senior brother will be careful. Junior brother, take care of yourself too. Senior brother Wang wanted to help the Li family, but he was powerless to do so. After he finished speaking, senior brother Wang left with his people. The disciples of the Li family also left while supporting each other. All of them had sorrowful expressions on their faces. It was obvious that their mood was extremely low. The Li family left dejectedly. On the other side, Shao Chen led the group to a dense forest to rest. Shao Chen had originally planned to share the Yin Wind Stone with everyone, but who would have thought that no one would agree and would let Shao Chen use it alone. You're the first chosen of our sacred palace, so this Yin Wind Stone should belong to you. Moreover, your strength is also beneficial to our sacred palace. Cut the crap, the first Yin Wind Stone is yours. This was what Chen Yu said. The Yin Wind Stone was very precious, but no one was jealous of it. Instead, they took the initiative to give it to Shao Chen. Under everyone's insistence, Shao Chen had no choice but to refine the Yin Wind Stone alone. Everyone stood guard for Shao Chen. Shao Chen sat down cross-legged, holding the Yin Wind Stone with both hands. His eyes were slightly closed as strands of Yin Wind Qi continuously entered Shao Chen's body. As the Yin Wind Qi entered his body, the spiritual energy in Shao Chen's body began to circulate on its own. He could clearly feel that the spiritual energy in his body was becoming more and more condensed as it circulated on its own. At the same time, his cultivation was also constantly improving. The Yin Wind Stone's effects were relatively simple, but it was undeniably powerful. Just the fact that it could condense one's spiritual energy was enough to make any cultivator go crazy. Shao Chen could not help but be overjoyed when he felt the terrifying effects of the Yin Wind Stone for the first time. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1281. It took Shao Chen an entire night to refine the palm-sized Yin Wind Stone in his hand. Because all the energy within it had been completely refined by Shao Chen, the Yin Wind Stone shattered in a very natural manner. A gust of wind blew past and it was reduced to dust. After he completely refined and absorbed the Yin stone, Xiao Chen was able to clearly sense that his cultivation had improved greatly, and he was even more confident in his heart. So long as he possessed sufficient Yin stones, he would absolutely be able to break through into the perfection stage of the Tao Emperor realm within half a year of time. At that time, he would possess the ability to go against Bai Churan. The perfection of the Tao Emperor realm was the most basic requirement to ascend the hallowed rankings. Even the weakest chosen on the hallowed rankings was at the perfection of the Tao transformation realm. Xiao Chen exhaled softly and slowly opened his eyes. He glanced at Qinling, Long Qing and the others who were still protecting him and revealed a faint smile. Let's go. These Yin stones are really treasures. I can't be the only one benefiting from them, right? After personally experiencing the benefits of the Yin stones, Xiao Chen was even more confident about this trip to the heavenly Yin Valley. He firmly believed that as long as he had sufficient Yin stones, not only would he be able to improve greatly, but Qinling, Long Qing and the others as well. Searching for even more Yin stones was the goal of Xiao Chen and the others for the next half a year. If they were lucky, Xiao Chen believed that the sacred palace's strength would probably improve greatly in half a year. Everyone smiled when they heard Xiao Chen's words, and then they continued on their way. Searching for Yin stones in the heavenly Yin Valley wasn't difficult, but it wasn't easy either. It depended on two things. One was luck, and the other was strength. After all, there were too many monks and too little porridge. Those who were lucky could discover Yin stones, while those who were strong could seize them. In short, strength and luck were equally important in how much one could obtain. The heavenly Yin Valley wasn't small, so after half a month passed, Xiao Chen and the others naturally obtained some gains. Moreover, they seized some Yin stones from the disciples of the other sects during this period of time. Of course, Xiao Chen and the others fought against some weaker sections. With the current strength of the sacred palace, they were still slightly inferior to those stronger sections. So, Xiao Chen naturally wouldn't foolishly send himself to them when he knew he wasn't a match for them. Their gains during this half a month of time were considerable. At the very least, each of them obtained at least 2 Yin stones. Xiao Chen, Qinling, Long Qing and the others had persevered, so he obtained the most Yin stones. He obtained 5 Yin stones. Actually, Xiao Chen knew why Qinling and the others gave him so many Yin stones. All of them hoped that he could break through to the perfection of the Tao Emperor realm as soon as possible, because only then would Xiao Chen possess the strength to fight Bai Churan. It was impossible to mediate between him and Bai Churan. So, the sooner Xiao Chen broke through to the perfection of the Tao Emperor realm, the better it would be for the sacred palace as well. Because if a chosen on the hallowed rankings appeared in the sacred palace, then their status in the heavenly Yin solar sect would rise greatly. After all, the heavenly Yin solar sect only had 2 chosen on the hallowed rankings. Xiao Chen was moved by their hope, but he didn't say anything. He could only work hard and strive to break through to the perfection of the Tao Emperor realm as soon as possible. After half a month passed, everyone's cultivation improved. Especially Xiao Chen. He could already faintly sense the barrier to the perfection of the Tao Emperor realm. Half a month in the heavenly Yin Valley was practically equivalent to a few years of cultivation for Xiao Chen in the outside world. This was how terrifying a secret realm was. Xiao Chen and the others found a place to rest at night. At the same time, Qin Shuru and the others started to refine the Yin stones, while Xiao Chen and the others were responsible for standing guard for them. In the heavenly Yin Valley, it was naturally impossible to let down one's guard. Therefore, when everyone refined the Yin stones, they did it in group. One group was responsible for cultivating, while the other group was responsible for guarding. Now, it was Qin Shuru and the other 3 girls' turn to refine the Yin stones. The 4 of them sat at the center while Xiao Chen and the others gathered around them. All of them seemed to have their eyes closed, but they were actually constantly vigilant towards every single movement in the surroundings. The night was dark. It was a night that wasn't any different from any other night. Everything seemed to be very normal. However, it was precisely during this seemingly impermanent night that Xiao Chen's sharp senses suddenly noticed two weak auras amidst the silent night. These two auras were approaching them. Xiao Chen suddenly opened his eyes when he noticed this. At the same time, Chen Ling, Long Qing, and Chen Yu noticed the existence of these two auras as well. The four of them exchanged glances before Xiao Chen said in a low voice, "Senior brother Chen Yu, stay behind. I'll go take a look with big brother and second sister." Without knowing the other party's identity and purpose, Xiao Chen didn't dare to let his guard down. He left Chen Yu to lead the others to continue guarding Qin Shiru and the others while he, Chen Ling, and Long Qing went to take a look. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Xiao Chen nodded in response. Then, under the cover of the night, the three siblings quickly disappeared from their original spot. After Xiao Chen and the others left, Emperor Qing and the others opened their eyes one after another and were secretly on guard. Obviously, they had also noticed that something was wrong. Taking advantage of the cover of the night, Xiao Chen and the others quickly discovered the source of these two auras. There was no doubt that they were two disciples of the Heavenly Note Extreme Yang sect. However, at this time, these two disciples were injured. It was obvious that they had just experienced a battle. The disciples of two sects should have encountered each other, and then a battle broke out. The sects that these two disciples belonged to were defeated, so they had no choice but to escape and inadvertently barge into the place where Xiao Chen and the others were. The cultivation of these two disciples wasn't high to begin with. They were only at the initial Dao Emperor stage. Moreover, they were seriously injured. Therefore, after Xiao Chen and the others exchanged glances, they didn't think much and immediately attacked. Since they were already injured, it didn't take much effort for Xiao Chen and the others to successfully capture the two disciples and bring them back. Seeing Xiao Chen and the others return with the two injured disciples, Chen Yu and the others secretly heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that there wasn't any danger. Continue to cultivate. It'll be fine. Glancing at Qin Shiru and the others who were also alarmed, Xiao Chen indicated that the four girls didn't have to worry and continued to cultivate. After saying that, Xiao Chen came to the two disciples and asked indifferently, "Which sect do you belong to? Why are you seriously injured?" Xiao Chen had already guessed what had happened to these two disciples, but he still wanted to ask clearly. After all, in the heavenly Yin Valley, the various sects were actually in a competitive relationship with each other. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1282. Xiao Chen was very curious about the encounter of these two disciples. After all, this was related to the safety of his side. Upon hearing Xiao Chen's words, the two disciples exchanged glances with each other. A vicious glint flashed across one of them's eyes before he spoke. "I can tell you, but..." Just as the disciple was speaking, another disciple beside him angrily interrupted, "You can't tell them. You can't tell them." The two of them seemed to know some kind of secret. However, one of them was willing to reveal it, while the other was unwilling to. After hearing their words, Xiao Chen did not panic. He just quietly looked at the two of them. At the same time, a faint smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. It seemed that things were not as simple as he thought. This was probably not a simple battle between two factions. Xiao Chen didn't urge them. He just calmly looked at the two disciples. Under Xiao Chen's gaze, the disciple who was willing to tell the secret to Xiao Chen shouted angrily, "Why can't I say it?" Senior Marshal Sister was still in their hands. If he could save Senior Marshal Sister, so what if he told them? In any case, we can't interfere with that place. If we can save Senior Sister and cause trouble for them, why can't we tell them? The disciple said with hatred. Hearing this, the other disciple who had scolded him earlier fell silent. Seeing that his companion had fallen silent, the disciple turned his gaze to Shao Qin and took a deep breath, then said, "Shao Qin, we have discovered a culvert made of wind stones. There are a large number of wind stones inside. I estimate that there are no less than 300 pieces. If you can agree to my conditions, I will tell you the location of this culvert." Wind stone culvert? Hearing this disciple's words, the eyes of Shao Qin, Chunling, Long Qing and the rest all lit up. Although Shao Qin and the others had not seen the wind stone culvert with their own eyes, they had some understanding of it. The so-called wind stone culvert was actually the eye of the wind valley's cold wind. Since it was the eye of the wind, the cold wind within it was naturally incomparably strong. Moreover, as the source of the cold wind, there would definitely be a large number of wind stones within it. However, the location of the wind eye was not fixed. Instead, it was constantly changing. Therefore, every time the chilly wind valley opened, the place that most of the disciples wanted to find was the chilly wind stone culvert, which was also the location of the wind eye. Because as long as they found the eye of the storm, they would be able to obtain a large number of wind stones. Of course, if any of the storm eyes of the wind was discovered, it meant that an intense battle was about to erupt. After all, no faction wished to share such a precious treasure. Never had he imagined that it was actually related to the wind stone culvert. In this way, even Shao Qin was unable to maintain his composure. Shao Qin had already deeply experienced the benefits of the wind stone culvert. If he was able to occupy the wind stone culvert, then Shao Qin was absolutely confident in breaking through to the perfection stage of the Tao Emperor realm. It was truly a pleasant surprise. I never expected that these two disciples would actually bring news of the wind stone culvert. Shao Qin forcefully suppressed the excitement in his heart and looked at the disciple as he spoke. "What is it? Tell me." For the sake of the wind stone culvert, Shao Qin didn't mind listening to the disciple's conditions. If it was within his ability, then Shao Qin didn't mind making a deal with him. The disciple didn't conceal anything when he heard Shao Qin, and he immediately told Shao Qin everything. Shao Qin found out from this disciple that he was called Yu Linjiang, and his companion was called Wu Fengzi. Both of them were disciples from Mingyue's pavilion. Originally, they were searching for the wind stone within Heavenly Valley, and they hadn't encountered any danger during this half a month of time. However, just a day ago, their group had arrived at a nearby gorge. Originally, they thought that it was an extremely ordinary search. However, during the process of searching for the wind stone in the gorge, they'd actually unintentionally noticed the eye of a storm, a wind stone culvert. This discovery naturally caused all the disciples from Mingyue's pavilion to be extremely excited. The meaning of a storm and a wind stone culvert was naturally self-evident. They originally thought that it was the luck of Mingyue's pavilion, but who would have imagined that after this great joy, disaster would descend? It was also by chance that another group called the Blackstone sect had entered the gorge, and they quickly noticed the eye of the storm and the wind stone culvert. The wind stone culvert was a place that all the factions would fight to the death for. Unsurprisingly, the disciples of the Blackstone sect had made their move. Within the Heavenly Sun sect, apart from the main faction, there were 5 other factions that were second only to the main faction in strength. They were called the 5 great factions by the disciples because of their strength. The Blackstone sect was one of the 5 great factions. As one of the 5 great factions, the disciples of Mingyue's pavilion were naturally no match for the Blackstone sect. In the end, as expected, Mingyue's pavilion suffered a crushing defeat, and the leader of Mingyue's pavilion was captured by the other side. As for Yu Linjiang and Wu Fengzi, they were lucky enough to escape under the cover of their companions. Yu Linjiang's request was very simple, and that was to rescue the first senior sister of Mingyue's pavilion. As long as they could rescue the first senior sister of Mingyue's pavilion, Yu Linjiang would tell Shao Chun the location of the Enwind stone culvert. Hearing Yu Linjiang's words, Shao Chun agreed without much hesitation. First of all, it was impossible for Shao Chun to give up on the stone culvert of the Enwind, even if his opponents were likely to be from the Black Stone sect, one of the 5 major sections. Furthermore, they might not be the only sect. After all, the stone culvert of the Enwind had already been discovered, which would naturally attract people from other sections. Even so, Shao Chun had to fight for it. As for the result, it was another story. After all, wealth came from danger. If you didn't try, how would you know the result? If he couldn't give up on the Enwind stone culvert, he would naturally become enemies with the Blackstone sect. However, rescuing the first senior sister of Mingyue's pavilion was not in conflict, so Shao Chun agreed without much hesitation. Looking at Yu Linjiang, Shao Chun said, "I agree. Tell me the location of the Enwind stone culvert." Shao Chun nodded. Yu Linjiang didn't play any tricks and immediately gave him an address. Hearing this, Shao Chun nodded. Seeing this, Yu Linjiang and Wu Fengzi also stood up. Yu Linjiang cupped his hands and said to Shao Chun, "In that case, we'll have to trouble senior brother. We won't disturb you any longer. I hope senior brother can keep your promise and rescue our first senior sister." Yu Linjiang and Wu Fengzi immediately wanted to leave, but Emperor Qing said coldly, "Why are you in such a hurry to leave? How do we know if the address you two gave us is real? Please add it to your collection, monthly vote recommend it." Chapter 1283. Yu Linjiang and Wu Fengzi were about to leave, but Emperor Qing clearly had no intention of letting them go so easily. In fact, this was normal. After all, there was no evidence for what they said. Who knew if the address was real or not? Therefore, according to Emperor Qing's intention, they would naturally bring the two of them to the Enwind stone culvert. Moreover, if the two of them met disciples of other factions on the way and told them the secret, the competition for the Enwind stone culvert would be even more intense. The Azure Emperor had indeed guessed their thoughts. Yu Linjiang was indeed thinking the same thing. He did intend to spread the news of the Enwind stone culvert as soon as he left, so as to attract more factions to fight for it. Yu Linjiang was not a fool. He knew that he could not place all his hopes on Shao Chun and the Sacred Palace. After all, the opponent was one of the 5 major factions, the Blackstone sect. How could the Sacred Palace alone rescue the great senior sister of the Mingyue court? To put it bluntly, Yu Linjiang did not trust the Sacred Palace. His idea was very simple. Since the Mingyue court was destined to not get the Enwind stone culvert, they would do their best to stir up trouble. When the time came, not only would the Mingyue court be able to take the opportunity to rescue the great senior sister, they might even be able to fish in troubled waters and obtain unexpected benefits. Besides, even if they did not obtain anything in the end, Yu Linjiang would be happy to see them cause more trouble for the Blackstone sect. He already had a plan in mind, but now that Emperor Qing had ordered them not to leave, Yu Linjiang's heart immediately tightened. If the Sacred Palace did not release the great senior sister, all his plans would be ruined. Just as he was thinking about how to escape, Shao Chun spoke up. "Let them go." He did not stop the two of them. Emperor Qing and the others were puzzled when they heard Shao Chun's words, but since Shao Chun had spoken, they naturally would not say anything more. While everyone was puzzled, Yu Linjiang and Wu Fengzi left. Before leaving, Yu Linjiang secretly glanced at Shao Chun and sneered in his heart. "What an idiot, but I have to thank you." Yu Linjiang thought that Shao Chun was an idiot and did not know what he was thinking. However, he did not know that Shao Chun actually understood everything. He let the two of them go because Shao Chun wanted them to stir up more trouble. At this time, Emperor came to Shao Chun's side and asked, "Senior brother, why did you let them go? No one knows whether what they said is true or not. Even if it's true, when the news, more disciples of the other factions, more disciples to come, we will to face to face to face to face to face to face to faces to say, Senior brother, why did you let them go? Who knows if what they said they said. I want the two of them to stir up more trouble. The more trouble they cause, the better it is for us. Originally, they thought that Shao Chun had been deceived by Yu Linjiang, which was why he let the two of them go. However, Shao Chun had obviously guessed Yu Linjiang's thoughts and had let them go on purpose. However, they did not know what Shao Chun wanted to do. Only Chen Ling and Chen Yu seemed to understand something and smiled slightly. Shao Chun did not explain too much to the crowd. As soon as he finished speaking, he went to the side and sat down cross-legged. Although Emperor Qing and the others were still confused, they did not ask any more questions. They could only sit in a circle again and close their eyes to rest. At the same time, they were on guard against any movement around them. After a night of silence, early the next morning, Qin Shuru and the other three girls ended their cultivation. Everyone did not waste any time and started to rush to the address Yu Linjiang gave them last night. The Yin Wind stone culvert was not far from where Shao Chen and the others were now. They would arrive in less than a day. However, Shao Chen did not seem to be in a hurry. He did not rush at full speed along the way. On the contrary, Shao Chen even instructed everyone to carefully hide their track. It was fine if they were slow, but they could not be discovered by the disciples of the Blackstone sect. Just like that, everyone hid their tracks along the way. As a result, their speed naturally could not be fast. It took an entire day and night for them to arrive at the location of the Yin Wind stone culvert on the morning of the second day. The Yin Wind stone culvert was located in the depths of a valley. It was surrounded by dense forests and towering mountain peaks on both sides. The geographical location was extremely easy to hide. Faced with such a geographical environment, Shao Chen led the disciples to hide in the dense forest of the mountain stream. Moreover, they could see the entrance of the Yin Wind stone culvert from here. They did not act rashly. Shao Chen and the others hid. At the same time, when they arrived, they saw the disciples of the Blackstone sect. There were at least 500 people, and just from what they could see, there were no less than 5 prospective chosen saints. With such numbers and such strength, they were indeed worthy of being one of the 5 great factions of the Yin and Yang sects. Looking at the scene before him, Emperor Qing seemed to understand something. He looked at Shao Chen with admiration. Senior brother, I understand what you meant the day before. Emperor Qing and the others were still filled with doubts when Shao Chen released Yu Linjiang and Wu Fengzi the night before. However, after seeing the strength of the Blackstone sect with their own eyes, Emperor Qing and the others finally understood the significance of Shao Chen's actions. Shao Chen smiled faintly when he heard Emperor Qing's words. Our sacred palace's foundation is still shallow after all. Moreover, there are too few people this time. Although we don't fear anyone, we naturally can't do something that's courting death. At present, we still don't have the qualifications to fight head-on with the Blackstone sect. Therefore, it's impossible to monopolize this Yin Wind stone culvert. Since we don't have the ability to monopolize it, we can only share it with others. This way we may even gain some benefits. Therefore, I need Yu Linjiang and Wu Fengzi to stir up this pool of water. The more muddied, the better. Shao Chen was a very confident person, but he was never arrogant. Therefore, after hearing this news, Shao Chen immediately knew that the sacred palace alone would definitely not be able to handle such a big bet. If that was the case, they would naturally need help. Just imagine what would happen if the people from the other factions learned about the Yin Wind stone culvert from Yu Linjiang and Wu Fengzi. They would definitely rush over as soon as possible. What would the result be if these factions rushed over? The disciples of the various factions would fight for supremacy over the Yin Wind stone culvert. As such, they naturally had to join forces to defeat the strongest faction first. Otherwise, no one would be able to gain anything. Therefore, if the disciples of the other factions rushed over, not only would they not be a threat to the sacred palace, they would even be helping the sacred palace. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendations. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.